Chapter 2532 Slaying Fiend Kings. 2532 Slaying Fiend Kings. The Fiend King of Firmament Ascension Palace was the first to arrive. Against the attack of the Fiend King, the martial Tao Prime Body did not dare to be careless. However, when the Fiend King attacked, he did not summon his Grotto Heaven right away. He was not the only one. The 4 Fiend Kings charging over from behind did not release their Grotto Heavens either. The 5 of them were not being overconfident on purpose. In theory, Fiend Kings could crush perfected Fiend cultivators with a single finger. Furthermore, 5 Fiend Kings attacked at the same time. It would seem like they were making a fuss instead if they summoned their Grotto Heavens. Even Grotto Heaven realm experts would rarely summon their Grotto Heavens right away in a fight, let alone against a perfected fiend. Sensing that opening, the gaze of the martial Tao Prime Body intensified. For him, the Grotto Heaven of a king-level expert was the only thing he could not take head-on and defend against. After all, the Grotto Heaven was a crystallization derived from the various dermic das of the king-level experts throughout their lives. A Grotto Heaven had already surpassed the perfected one realm and was at a completely different level. They were the strongest methods of king-level experts. However, the minor Grotto Heaven Fiend Kings must be dreaming if they thought that they could kill Su Zimo in melee combat without releasing their Grotto Heavens. The martial Tao valued unlocking one's potential. The foundation of all dermic formulations was to strengthen oneself continuously and view oneself as heaven and earth without the use of external forces. Therefore, in the perfected one realm of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend Das, Tao fruits were condensed. However, the martial Tao Prime Body condensed a Tao body. The profoundness of his dermic Tao was fused into the true martial Tao body, every single inch of his flesh and bones. Although the Fiend Kings nourished their bodies with their minor Grotto Heavens, they could not defend against the true martial Tao body of the martial Tao Prime Body. Against the attacks of the 5 Fiend Kings, the martial Tao Prime Body did not dodge. Instead, he channeled his blood chi and counterattacked with the rumbling sound of a tsunami. Instantly, 5 punches were released in succession to fight the 5 Fiend Kings head-on. "You have a death wish!" The Fiend King of Firmament Ascension Palace sneered. The Fiend King of Black Fiend Sect pouted his lips in disdain. "The struggles of a cornered beast!" Boom! The 5 Fiend Kings collided against the fist of the martial Tao Prime Body. The interval between them was extremely short, and there was almost only a single sound. The 5 of them shuddered and their eyes widened in disbelief. Their arms were already numb from that punch. Furthermore, the 5 Fiend Kings felt an unimaginable divine power surge into their bodies through their arms and their organs vibrated. The Fiend King of Firmament Ascension Palace suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Of course, such injuries were not serious for a Fiend King. However, before he could react, the martial Tao Prime Body had already closed in and punched down twice in succession with an unstoppable might like a mountain. Bang! Bang! The Fiend King of Firmament Ascension Palace could only raise his arms to defend. However, his arm was snapped by 2 punches from the martial Tao Prime Body and his middle was now exposed. A 3rd punch descended and hammered heavily on the top of his head. Bang! The Fiend King of Firmament Ascension Palace shuddered and his gaze froze with a shocked expression. Thereafter, his pupils dilated and his life force drained rapidly. The top of his head was still intact. However, his consciousness was already shattered by a single punch from the martial Tao Prime Body and his essence spirit was not spared either. It was destroyed on the spot and died. With just 4 punches, a Fiend King of Firmament Ascension Palace was killed by the martial Tao Prime Body on the spot. The expressions of the 4 Fiend Kings behind him changed when they saw that. The 4 of them did not have time to think and were about to summon their minor Grotto Heavens when the martial Tao Prime Body suddenly opened his mouth and released the secret skill of myriad beings sound. Roar! Instantly, the tunnel echoed with the roars of dragons, tigers, phoenixes, cranes, wolves, dogs, apes and horses. It was as though millions of living beings were roaring at the same time. As the true martial Tao body advanced to greater mastery, the might of myriad beings' sound increased as well. Furthermore, it was difficult for myriad beings' sound to spread in such a relatively sealed tunnel. Instead, it reverberated continuously in the tunnel, causing its power to increase significantly. Although it could not injure the Fiend Kings present, they were shocked and slightly stunned. It was that moment of shock that allowed the martial Tao Prime body to seize the opportunity to charge in front of the Fiend King of the Black Fiend sect. He punched out and struck the other party's face. The Fiend King of Black Fiend sect was overturned by a single punch from the martial Tao Prime body, and his face was mangled. His essence spirit was destroyed and he died on the spot. The other 3 Fiend Kings woke up quickly and did not dare to hesitate anymore. They summoned their minor Grotto Heavens one after another, wanting to make use of the Grotto Heavens' power to kill the martial Tao Prime body. However, the Grotto Heavens of the 3 Fiend Kings dissipated the moment they were released before they could take shape. The 3 Fiend Kings were shocked. The Grotto Heaven was the ultimate technique and strongest trump card of king-level experts. However, the 3 of them failed to release it. With that slight delay, the martial Tao Prime body attacked once more and threw 3 consecutive punches at the Fiend King of Fiend Ridge. All of them were blocked by the Fiend King. The martial Tao Prime body took a deep breath and burst forth once more, punching 7 times in succession. The attacks were ferocious and dense like rain that was suffocating. The Fiend King of Fiend Ridge did not even have the chance to summon his Grotto Heaven spirit treasure, and was beaten to death by the 10 punches of the martial Tao Prime body. Of course, the remaining 2 Fiend Kings managed to escape, albeit with bewildered expressions. "What's going on?" When Ling Xian and the others heard the commotion behind them, they turned back hurriedly and caught sight of the martial Tao Prime body counterattacking and killing 3 Fiend Kings in succession. The many Fiend Kings at the front and back were shocked and in disbelief. A perfected fiend had actually crossed a major cultivation realm to kill 3 Grotto Heaven Fiend Kings. Even if the Fiend Kings present could not summon their Grotto Heavens, their physiques should be enough to kill all perfected fiends. However, what happened earlier on dealt a huge psychological blow to the Fiend Kings. The physical body of a perfected fiend can actually be cultivated to such an extent? He's even comparable to Fiend Kings? There's something strange about that lad's dermic Tao. It seems different from ours. What's going on? Divine powers and secret skills can't even be released down here. Was he just fighting in melee combat using his physique and bloodline? When the Fiend Kings realized the strangeness of this place, they did not dare to act rashly and discussed in secret. The remnant might of the dermic Tao remains in the tomb of the Fiend Emperor and has not dissipated for millions of years. It's only logical that there are various restrictions. Fiend King Hidden Space frowned and said deeply. However, I've never seen a tomb like this that can restrict the release of Grotto Heavens. Your Highness, I suggest that we leave this place immediately and think about it at length. After pondering for a moment, Fiend King Hidden Space felt uneasy and could not help but say, "There's so many of us. What's there to be afraid of?" Ling Xian harumphed coldly. "That slut only has a single apocalyptic fiend diagram, and yet she dares to move around casually here. Don't you have a complete fiend diagram with you?" Fiend King Hidden Space nodded and did not persuade further. The expressions of Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the others darkened. Not only did he fail to kill the martial Tao Prime body, he even lost the Fiend King. For the Fiend sects, every single Fiend King could raise their factions by a level. To think that they would suffer a huge loss in the hands of the martial Tao Prime body. Chapter 2533 Underground Ancient City. 2533 Underground Ancient City. Under normal circumstances, it was difficult for one to die at the Grotto Heaven realm. Given the capabilities of the martial Tao Prime body, even if he used all his trump cards and even the Hell Suppression tripod, he would only be able to defeat a Fiend King at most in melee combat. There was no way he could kill 3 Fiend Kings in succession. However, the area beneath the Fiend Cave was way too strange. Not only could they not release divine powers or secret skills, even the Grotto Heavens of the Fiend Kings were suppressed and could not be released. As a result, the combat strength of the three Fiend Kings was greatly reduced, and they were killed by the martial Tao Prime body. The death of the three Fiend Kings caused the entire place to fall into a momentary silence. Even Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the others did not know if there were any other strange things in the tomb of the Fiend Emperor, and did not dare to act rashly. "Let's capture that slut first, and not let her escape again," Ling Xian said in a deep voice. Fiend King hid in space, and the other five continued to protect Ling Xian as they sped forward. The martial Tao Prime body picked up the storage bags of the three Fiend Kings and followed. The expressions of Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the other Fiend Kings darkened as they exchanged glances without saying anything. However, everyone had already arrived and naturally could not retreat. The dozens of Fiend Kings followed suit. A strange formation was formed in the tomb passage. The 7 of them from Firmament Ascension Palace sped at the front, while the martial Tao Prime body hung at the back alone. Behind him were more than 10 Fiend Kings. The 3 factions coexisted peacefully in this passage. After a while, a faint light appeared in front of them, and they had already arrived at the end of the passage. Fiend King hid in space, and the others escorted Ling Xian out of the passage, and everything opened up before them. Ling Xian shuddered at the sight before him. Even hid in space, and the other 3 Fiend Kings gasped slightly with shocked expressions and disbelief in their eyes. Up ahead, there was a gigantic ancient city that stood deep underground like a massive object, glaring at the group of cultivators that charged in. The ancient city was majestic and even surpassed the many immortal cities on the ground. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, it would be difficult to imagine that such an ancient city existed deep underground. Everyone realized that there was a high chance that the ancient city was the core of the Fiend Emperor's tomb. The true treasures, opportunities and inheritances should be in this ancient city. Everyone was invigorated and their gazes burned. Right then, a beautiful figure flashed past the top of the ancient city wall. It was Demoness Ji. "Go!" Ling Xian could not wait any longer, and charged towards the ancient city. Fiend King hid in space, and the others stood guard at the side while the martial Tao Prime body, Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the other Fiend Kings followed closely behind. In the blink of an eye, everyone arrived at the entrance of the ancient city. The strange thing was that there were 2 rows of humanoid clay guards standing on both sides of the city gate, wielding clay spears. There were also many clay guards standing on the city wall. They were densely packed and motionless. Some of them wielded bows and arrows and guarded the city wall. Some of them formed groups of 10,000 people that seemed to be patrolling the city walls. They looked orderly and made the place seem heavily guarded. "What the hell is that?" Ling Xian passed by and wanted to step forward and smash a clay figure. However, he was stopped by Fiend King hid in space. "Your Highness, don't act rashly. This ancient city looks a little strange." Fiend King hid in space had a guarded expression as he whispered, "Everyone be careful." The martial Tao Prime body ignored them and walked past the group from Firmament Ascension Palace and the others before entering the ancient city. When they saw the martial Tao Prime body walk over without encountering any danger, Ling Xian's group and Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the other Fiend Kings moved one after another and charged into the ancient city. There were all sorts of structures in the ancient city, and it looked no different from the immortal cities on the ground. However, the streets of the ancient city were extremely empty and deserted. Apart from teams of clay guards, there was no one else. As the group of them traveled, the ancient city was filled with clay men guarding. There were already hundreds of thousands of them. As expected of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse, a Fiend King of Firmament Ascension Palace lamented. Even if he dies, he has to build such an ancient city in the tomb and create so many clay guards so that he can command thousands of fiend troops after his death. Fiend King hid in space suddenly frowned, as though he recalled something. Right then, a round of applause sounded from a group of more than 10,000 clay men patrolling at the front. "How smart!" Demoness G's voice sounded among the clay guards with a hint of mockery. "However, do you guys think that these are just clay guards?" Crack! Suddenly, a sound came from the clay guard, as though something had shattered. Creak! Immediately after, the sound intensified and spread through all the clay guards and the entire ancient city. Right in front of everyone, cracks appeared on the mud on the clay guards and they fell off, revealing guards with flesh and blood. Of course, there was no life in the bodies of the guards. However, the weapons in their hands were sharp and cold after the clay was removed. The eyes of the guards were filled with madness as they glared at the people who entered the ancient city with a murderous aura. Otherworldly soldiers that grew flesh and blood. Ling Xian frowned slightly. These are not otherworldly soldiers. Fiend King Hidden Space said sternly. Even if otherworldly soldiers manage to condense flesh and blood, it will definitely be incomplete. There's no way they can be preserved in such a complete manner. These people were originally alive back then. They were sealed in the clay by Fiend Emperor Apocalypse with a supreme secret skill for tens of millions of years until they were awakened today. After tens of millions of years, those guards had naturally died. At that moment, the only thing that drove them was the final consciousness left in their minds by Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. Destruction, conquest and killing. Upon hearing Fiend King Hidden Space's words, everyone present shuddered and felt chills run down their spines. There were at least millions or even 10 million guards in this ancient city. However, back then, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse sealed these tens of millions of fiends and killed them alive as burial objects, burying them underground for tens of millions of years. It's no wonder why his title is Apocalypse. To think that he was able to do such a shocking thing! Ling Xian murmured softly with a hint of envy in his tone. Kill! 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 Countless awakened guards were controlled by the remnant thoughts in their minds and roared at everyone from Firmament Ascension Palace. Bang! Boom! On the long streets on all sides, ancient chariots sped over with a shocking might. More and more ancient city guards gathered over. It was a black patch with no end in sight. Against such a lineup, everyone present calmed down rapidly. Although there were many guards in the ancient city, most of their cultivation in the past was only at the earth and heaven immortal realm. At best, the strongest was only at the perfected fiend realm. Almost everyone present were Fiend King experts. Even if they could not release their grotto heavens, they could make use of their physiques, bloodlines and grotto heaven spirit treasures to kill their way out. Where's that slut? Ling Xian surveyed his surroundings, wanting to search for traces of Demoness Ji in the vast army of guards. However, there were too many guards and he could not even see Demoness Ji's figure. Your Highness, that woman should be dead, Fiend King Hidden Space said. That Demoness is only a grade 5 heaven immortal. It's almost impossible for her to survive the army of guards. Chapter 2534 I'm here to take you home. 2534 I'm here to take you home. After Fiend King Hidden Space said that, he closed his eyes and sensed his surroundings. Over there! Fiend King Hidden Space suddenly opened his eyes and his gaze intensified. Boom! Fiend King Hidden Space waved his robes and burst forth dozens of feet, beating up the ancient city guards in front of him and creating a spacious passage. At the end of the passage, Demoness Ji looked flustered and dodged behind an ancient city guard. Although she was clearly fleeing in an extremely sorry state, everyone felt that Demoness Ji had a graceful figure and charm. Even when she escaped, she looked stunning. The martial Dao Prime body's heart skipped a beat. Demoness Ji's movement technique gave him a sense of déjà vu. Back when he condensed the true martial Dao body and attracted the true martial heavenly tribulation, an extremely powerful phantom appeared in the 10th tribulation. Among them, a white-robed woman wielding a long sword was enchanting and charming. Her movement technique was almost identical to Demoness Ji's. Seems like Demoness Ji has also obtained quite a bit of opportunities in the fiend domain over the years. The martial Dao Prime body thought to himself. Among the many old friends who had ascended to Tianhuang mainland, Demoness Ji was the one he was least worried about. Given Demoness Ji's capabilities, it was almost impossible for anyone else to take advantage of her. It was already not bad if they were not played by her. One could not use their spirit consciousness beneath the fiend cave. Coupled with the fact that the ancient city guards were awakened and charged over with a massive commotion, Fiend King Hidden Space and the others lost track of Demoness Ji. Searching for someone in an army of 10 million was like searching for a needle in a haystack. However, Fiend King Hidden Space was certain that Demoness G could not have gone far. The reason why she lured everyone here intentionally was because she wanted to make use of the 10 million Fiend army here to cause damage to the group from Firmament Ascension Palace. Out of a special mentality, she would most likely observe her masterpiece in the nearby darkness. That was the reason why Fiend King Hidden Space intentionally said that Demoness G was definitely dead. His goal was to expose Demoness G. Demoness G was extremely smart as well. Although she was indignant, she quickly realized that this should be Fiend King Hidden Space's bait and did not move. Unfortunately, her heart still skipped a beat when she heard Fiend King Hidden Space's words. Her heart was beating slightly more violently, and Fiend King Hidden Space caught it instantly. He attacked right away and exposed her to everyone. Although the psychological warfare between both parties seemed short, it was extremely intense, and they tested one another's guesses. In the end, Fiend King Hidden Space was slightly superior. Demoness, you're still too inexperienced. Fiend King Hidden Space looked at Demoness G, who was not far away, with a mocking gaze. In a flash, Demoness G hid in the army of guards. Strangely enough, none of the guards attacked her. Instead, they were fearless and charged towards Firmament Ascension Palace, Fiend Celestial Black Heaven, and the others continuously. Humph, you're still thinking of escaping? Ling Xian sneered. Fiend King Hidden Space and the others charged the entire way and gave chase. Now that Demoness G's figure was exposed, and she was locked onto by the 6 Fiend Kings of Firmament Ascension Palace, it was impossible for her to escape even if she wanted to. Demoness G. Right then, a call sounded from the chaotic ancient city. Demoness G shuddered and froze on the spot with a look of disbelief in her beautiful eyes. That name. How could it be? Demoness G turned around and saw a purple-robed man striding over. Although the purple-robed man wore a silver mask, Demoness G recognized him instantly when she saw his eyes. Demoness G bit her lips gently, and her eyes reddened with tears. In the blink of an eye, the Martial Dao Prime body had already arrived before her. At that moment, it was like a dream. Why are you here, nerd? Demoness G's voice was slightly trembling as she sobbed. I'm here to take you home, the Martial Dao Prime body said gently. When she heard that, Demoness G could no longer hold it in and burst into tears. Right now, her mind was blank and she only wanted to cry. Back in Tianhuang mainland, as the pure maiden of the Fiend sex, she cultivated the pure maiden Sutra and bewitched all living beings. She rarely revealed her true emotions. Be it anger, cuteness, joy, or sadness, they were all disguises. She had only revealed her true emotions in front of a few people, and Su Zimo was one of them. In that short period of time, the remaining 6 Fiend Kings of Firmament Ascension Palace had already swept through the surrounding ancient city guards and surrounded the Martial Dao Prime body and Demoness G. When Ling Xian saw Demoness G's expression, his heart burned with jealousy. Gritting his teeth, he said, So, this adulterous couple knows one another. That's perfect. Kill the man but leave the slut. Beneath the silver mask of the Martial Dao Prime body, his expression turned cold, and his gaze turned sinister. Let's run! Demoness G tugged at the wrist of the Martial Dao Prime body, wanting to find an opportunity to hide among the endless ancient city guards once more. However, the Martial Dao Prime body did not budge when she tugged at him. That Ling Xian bullied you before, right? Suddenly, the Martial Dao Prime body asked. Huh! Demoness G turned back and looked at the Martial Dao Prime body with misty eyes in confusion. The Martial Dao Prime body said indifferently, Wait for me here for a moment. I'll go kill him. Don't. Demoness G was shocked and wiped away the tears in her eyes casually before saying hurriedly, No, that donkey was so stupid that he was played like a fiddle by me. I even tricked him into giving me a treasure map that he had collected for many years. If nobody told him, he wouldn't have known that he had been deceived by me for so many years. Demoness G was afraid that the Martial Dao Prime body would rush forward and fight for her on impulse. After all, apart from Prince Ling Xian, there were 6 Fiend Kings present. Among them, 2 of them were Supreme Fiend Kings. Demoness Ji had long heard about the martial Tao Prime Body. According to her understanding, the martial Tao Prime Body was only a perfected fiend and could not fight against Fiend Kings. Let's leave quickly and ignore him, Demoness Ji urged again. When Ling Xian heard Demoness Ji's words, his face turned red from embarrassment as he hollered. Slut, you still want to leave? The martial Tao Prime Body removed Demoness Ji's hand. Even calling you a slut is not allowed. The moment he said that, the feet of the martial Tao Prime Body hit heavily on the ground. With a boom, there was a loud explosion and the ground shook. The entire majestic ancient city seemed to be trembling. Countless ancient city guards paused in their attacks. Swoosh! The figure of the martial Tao Prime Body flashed and arrived before Ling Xian in the blink of an eye. It was way too fast. Ling Xian's pupils constricted. He had not expected that the martial Tao Prime Body would dare to attack him despite being surrounded by 6 Fiend Kings. This person was fearless and audacious. What was he trying to do? Was this person trying to kill him in front of 6 Fiend Kings? Your Highness, watch out! The 2 Fiend Kings closest to Ling Xian arrived beside him immediately. One of them was the other Supreme Fiend King. At the same time, the other 4 Fiend Kings gave up on their pursuit of Demoness Ji and rushed towards the martial Tao Prime Body. Chapter 25:35 Killing the Prince. 25:35 Killing the Prince. Splash! The blood chi of the 2 Fiend Kings beside Ling Xian surged and the sound of a tsunami echoed from their bodies as they charged towards the martial Tao Prime Body. Bang! Boom! The bloodline of the martial Tao Prime Body surged and it was as though a volcano had burst forth from his body. His blood chi churned and a gigantic furnace with raging flames appeared around him, seemingly about to incinerate everything in the world. Peerless divine power, heaven and earth furnace. Divine powers and secret skills could not be used beneath the Fiend Cave. However, the peerless divine power of the martial Tao Prime Body was a bloodline phenomenon to begin with and was not restricted at all. The moment he attacked, the martial Tao Prime Body released his full strength, wanting to kill Prince Ling Xian under the encirclement of 6 Fiend Kings. Boom! The martial Tao Prime Body punched with his left hand and collided with a minor Grotto Heaven Fiend King. The Fiend King shuddered and felt a shocking force. He was sent flying by a single punch from the martial Tao Prime Body and spat out blood. In the tomb passage earlier on, the martial Tao Prime Body killed a minor Grotto Heaven Fiend King in 4 punches without even using his bloodline phenomenon. Now that he had the augmentation of his bloodline phenomenon, and his strength had increased exponentially, there was no way the Fiend King of Firmament Ascension Palace could defend. Bang! The martial Tao Prime Body punched with his right hand and clashed against Supreme Fiend King Lu Tsang, who was on the other side. When Lu Tsang saw the menacing martial Tao Prime Body send a Fiend King flying with a single punch, he did not dare to be careless, and released his bloodline phenomenon right away. The 2 of them collided with their fists, and the bloodline phenomenons clashed continuously, devouring one another. Lu Tsang was a Supreme Fiend King after all. He had nurtured his body and bloodline with the major Grotto Heaven for many years and was far superior to ordinary Fiend Kings. He could defend against the ferocious power of the martial Tao Prime Body. The gaze of the martial Tao Prime Body intensified as he took another step forward and released another punch. Good timing! Fiend King Lu Tsang hollered as well and punched out without retreating a half step. Right then, a bronze square tripod suddenly flew out from the glabella of the martial Tao Prime Body, emanating an ancient and heavy aura. Before the punch of the martial Tao Prime Body could be released completely, he suddenly changed tactics and transformed his fist into a palm. He grabbed the bronze square tripod and smashed it down against Fiend King Lu Tsang's fist. You! Fiend King Lu Tsang's eyes widened as he released his dermic treasure hurriedly. Unfortunately, he was still a step too late. Crack! Although his body was strong, he could not withstand the impact of the Hell Suppression tripod. Accompanied by the sound of bones cracking, Fiend King Lu Tsang's entire arm was snapped by the hell suppression tripod, revealing bones that were stuck to his flesh in a shocking manner. As a supreme Fiend King Lu Tsang was confident in his status. When he saw that the martial Dao Prime body was barehanded, he naturally did not summon his dermic treasure right away. However, the martial Dao Prime body had no intention of getting entangled with him. If he was delayed by Fiend King Lu Tsang and the other 4 Fiend Kings at the back caught up, it would be extremely difficult for him to kill Ling Xian. The martial Dao Prime body wanted to crush the 2 Fiend Kings and kill Prince Ling Xian with a thunderous might. One of Fiend King Lu Tsang's arms was crippled by the hell suppression tripod and he retreated hurriedly. With that retreat, Ling Xian was completely exposed. Pissed. Ling Xian's expression changed starkly as he finally realized that even with the 6 Fiend Kings by his side, he was still in immense danger. Swoosh! 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 Hidden Space and the other 3 Fiend Kings summoned their Grotto Heaven spirit treasures hurriedly and attacked the martial Dao Prime body. The martial Dao Prime body tossed the hell suppression tripod behind his head and blocked the Grotto Heaven spirit treasures that were charging over. At the same time, he lunged towards Ling Xian. Surrounded by endless ancient city guards, there was nowhere to retreat and Ling Xian could only defend with all his might. As long as he could delay the martial Dao Prime body for a moment, and wait for the other 6 Fiend Kings to arrive, he could survive. Taking a deep breath of air, Ling Xian withdrew a mirror from his storage bag and used it as a shield. Let's see how many punches you can take. The martial Dao Prime body ignored the mirror treasure that Ling Xian propped up and punched over. Crack! The mirror treasure shattered. With just a slight pause, the fist of the martial Dao Prime body penetrated the mirror treasure and smashed heavily against the top of Ling Xian's head. Piak! It was as though a divine hammer had descended and a gigantic axe had split the mountains. Ling Xian's head was smashed into pieces by a single punch from the martial Dao Prime body and his essence spirit was destroyed on the spot. Back at the entrance of the Fiend Cave, Ling Xian was severely injured by a casual punch from the martial Dao Prime body and vomited blood. Right now, the martial Dao Prime body had released his bloodline phenomenon, the Heaven and Earth Furnace, and his strength had increased exponentially. Ling Xian could not defend against it at all and was killed on the spot by a single punch. At the same time, the Grotto Heaven spirit treasures of the 4 Fiend Kings finally broke through the obstruction of the hell suppression tripod and descended on the martial Dao Prime body. Bang! Bang! The martial Dao Prime body staggered from the smash of a gigantic seal and copper spear. 2 wounds appeared on his chest and abdomen with fresh blood dripping. The bloodline phenomenon of the Heaven and Earth Furnace was shattered by the 4 major Grotto Heaven spirit treasures and dissipated before long. Ah! Demoness G exclaimed worriedly when she saw that. But soon, she realized that the martial Dao Prime body stabilized himself rapidly, and charged towards the 4 Fiend Kings with the hell suppression tripod in his hands instead. Unable to use their essence spirits and Grotto Heavens, the true power of the Grotto Heaven spirit treasures could not be unleashed either. Furthermore, the martial Dao Prime body was shrouded by a bloodline phenomenon. Although the 4 major Grotto Heaven spirit treasures injured him, his foundation was not hurt. For the true martial Dao body, such an injury could be ignored. In fact, the martial Dao Prime body did not even have to repair it intentionally. The endless dermic Dao runes contained in the true martial Dao body alone could heal his wounds. Wah! The hearts of Hidden Space and the other 3 Fiend Kings skipped a beat. If they had not seen it personally, the 4 Fiend Kings would not have believed that the martial Dao Prime body was made of flesh and blood. After enduring the 4 major Grotto Heaven spirit treasures head-on, he actually dared to charge towards them as though nothing had happened. Fiend King Hidden Space could see everything clearly. A thin layer of flames appeared on the wounds on the martial Dao Prime body, and he stopped bleeding before long. The flames seemed to surge with a mysterious glow that contained some dermic Dao runes. Those wounds were healing at a visible speed. By the time the martial Dao Prime body arrived before the 4 Fiend Kings, his injuries were more than half healed. Bang! 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 The martial Tao Prime body had an aggressive aura as he raised the Hell Suppression tripod and smashed it towards the 4 Fiend Kings in an incomparably ferocious manner. Initially, the 4 Fiend Kings could have an absolute advantage if they joined forces. However, at that moment, they could not help but feel fearful against the frenzied attacks of the martial Tao Prime body. After all, 3 Fiend Kings died in the hands of the martial Tao Prime body earlier on. With the death of the prince, the 4 Fiend Kings were flustered and the martial Tao Prime body found an opportunity to break through the obstruction and return to Demoness G's side. When Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the others saw that, they were secretly speechless. Desolate Marshal was way too ferocious. He had actually slaughtered the prince under the protection of 6 Fiend Kings. On the contrary, Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the others were relieved. If nothing went wrong, Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao would definitely be alarmed with the death of Prince Ling Xian. At that time, even without them making a move, Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao would take revenge for his son and kill Desolate Marshal. Even if Desolate Marshal's backing, Emperor Bo Sun, was alarmed and Desolate Marshal was lucky to survive, it would not matter. Once the Fiend Emperors appeared and fought, a bloodbath would definitely break out in the Fiend domain. That would be a good opportunity for them to rise in the chaos. Chapter 2536 Apocalyptic Fiend Sutra 2536 Apocalyptic Fiend Sutra. Demoness Ji was both surprised and delighted when she saw the martial Tao Prime body kill Ling Xian and return alive. The martial Tao Prime body summoned the Hell Suppression tripod and attempted to break through the space here, wanting to bring Demoness Ji with him back to Avicii. However, the Hell Suppression tripod merely created a ripple when it struck the void. It could not break through the void to create a spatial tunnel connected to Avicii. The martial Tao Prime body had a calm expression and was not surprised. In truth, when he saw that the few Fiend Kings were unable to support their grotto heavens in the tomb passage previously, he had a rough guess that he would most likely not be able to teleport away from here at any moment. To be precise, any spatial technique could not be released within the Fiend Cave. He vaguely thought of a possibility. However, the situation was critical and the two of them had yet to escape from danger. Without hesitation, he could only flee with Demoness Ji first. Firmament Ascension Palace still had 6 Fiend Kings and there were about a dozen Fiend Kings from Black Fiend Sect and the other Fiend sections. If they were to join forces, he could still protect himself with the Hell Suppression tripod, but he could not ensure Demoness Ji's safety. That way! Demoness Ji was extremely smart and reacted quickly, pointing to the depths of the ancient city. The martial Tao Prime body did not reply and extended his arm, holding Demoness Ji's slender and soft waist gently as he sped forward. Although Demoness Ji's movement technique was exquisite, she was far inferior to him in terms of speed. Strange enough, the ancient city guards ignored the martial Tao Prime body and Demoness Ji. Instead, they charged towards Firmament Ascension Palace and the Fiend Kings of the 7 Fiend sections. On second thought, the martial Tao Prime body guessed a possibility. Demoness Ji and he both had the black incomplete diagram. That was the reason why the ancient city guards would not attack them. The 6 Fiend Kings of Firmament Ascension Palace had grim expressions. Under their protection, the prince was forcefully killed by a perfected fiend. If Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao knew about it, the 6 of them might be punished. When they saw the martial Tao Prime body and Demoness Ji escape, Fiend King hid in space and the others did not dare to hesitate, and hurriedly put away Ling Xian's corpse before chasing after him. Now that the prince was dead, all the more they could not let Desolate Marshal escape. However, divine powers and secret skills could not be used in the ancient city beneath the Fiend Cave. The Fiend Kings could not catch up to the martial Tao Prime body with just the power of their physiques and bloodline. Furthermore, there were endless ancient city guards obstructing them. Fiend King hid in space had a complete apocalyptic fiend diagram with him, and the surrounding ancient city guards would not attack him. However, he could only barely keep up with the martial Tao Prime body such that he would not lose them. The ancient city was way too huge, and the martial Dao Prime body carried Demoness G for a full 2 hours before they caught sight of a gigantic palace at the end of the ancient city. This should be the chamber of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. Let's hide inside, Demoness G said. The martial Dao Prime body and Demoness G entered the Fiend Emperor's chamber and looked over. They could not help but freeze on the spot. Upon entering the chamber, the first thing they saw was an empty hall. There were nothing but 9 palace doors on the walls around the hall. It was dark and deep within, leading to unknown places. Typically, for such an arrangement in a tomb, only one of the 9 palace doors would lead to life. If they made a wrong move, there was a high chance they would die here. The 2 of them could not be certain for a moment. Demoness G said, "If only I had the complete apocalyptic fiend diagram. There should be some hints." "What does the complete apocalyptic fiend diagram mean?" The martial Dao Prime body's heart skipped a beat as he suddenly asked. Demoness G explained. "Tens of millions of years ago, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse died. It's said that when the Fiend Emperor died, his skin turned into 18 apocalyptic fiend diagrams that scattered all over the fiend domain. Every single fiend diagram contains a portion of the apocalyptic fiend Sutra. It's said that if you can gather all 18 fiend diagrams, you'll be able to obtain the complete apocalyptic fiend Sutra. Everyone claims that the apocalyptic fiend Sutra is comparable to the taboo mystic classics. However, for so many years, no one has ever gathered all 18 fiend diagrams." The martial Dao Prime body frowned slightly and murmured, "There are 18 complete apocalyptic fiend diagrams?" "Not really," Demoness G said. "There are 2 sections to the Apocalyptic Fiend Sutra. Once you gather 9 fiend diagrams, a complete section will appear." 9? The eyes of the martial Dao Prime body lit up. Demoness G did not notice the abnormality of the martial Dao Prime body. She took out a black incomplete diagram from her storage bag and continued, "Unfortunately, I only managed to swindle one from Ling Xian." The martial Dao Prime body said, "What a coincidence. I have 8 here." He had a fiend diagram to begin with. Later on, he hunted down a few young masters of the fiend sex and gathered a total of 8 fiend diagrams. Coupled with the fiend diagram in Demoness G's hands, there were a total of 9. "Ah!" Demoness G exclaimed softly with a delighted expression. The moment the martial Dao Prime body took out the 8 fiend diagrams, the fiend diagram in Demoness G's hands left her hand and connected to the 8 fiend diagrams. Unfortunately, there was no apocalyptic fiend sutra on it, and there were only marks that resembled a map. Demoness G said, "I heard that Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao had 9 incomplete diagrams that formed the first section of the Apocalyptic Fiend Sutra. That was also the reason why he was able to become an emperor. However, this time round, something on the incomplete diagrams changed and the Fiend Sutra on them disappeared. That was why Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao was willing to hand the first section to Fiend King Hidden Space and the others so that they could bring people here to check things out." The martial Dao Prime body looked at the marks on the 9 fiend diagrams and suddenly said, "This map looks a little like this chamber. According to the instructions on it, we should take the second palace door on the left." Demoness G also noticed the direction on the fiend diagram and was delighted. "Let's hurry and leave." The martial Dao Prime body and Demoness G moved and charged into the second palace door on the left, disappearing before long. Fiend King Hidden Space had the fiend diagram with him, and would not be stopped by the ancient city guards. He was the first to arrive. When he entered the hall and saw the same 9 palace doors, he could not help but frown. The hall was empty without anyone around. It was clear that Desolate Marshal and Demoness G had already escaped into one of the palace doors. Fiend King Hidden Space was unable to judge which it was and did not dare to budge in casually. He could only guard the entrance of the chamber, and wait for the others from Firmament Ascension Palace to catch up. After a while, Fiend King Lu Tsang and the others finally charged out of the obstruction of the ancient city guards. They were covered in blood and panted. It took 2 hours just to advance without any obstacles. The ancient city guards were endless as they charged over. Indeed, they had expended a lot of energy after fighting for more than 2 hours. Strange enough, when the ancient city guards arrived before the chamber, they stopped in their tracks and none of them dared to barge in. Even though they were long dead, in their final thoughts, this was also a forbidden ground that could not be trespassed. The dozens of Fiend Kings such as Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the others fought their way out and finally arrived. Everyone swallowed a few immortal pills and rested for a while. Given their physiques and bloodlines, they would recover before long. Chapter 2537 Coffin. 2537 Coffin. Hidden space, why aren't you entering? After resting for a while, Fiend King Lu Tsung asked. There are 9 palace doors. I don't know which one they entered. Fiend King Hidden Space replied. The first thing that everyone thought of was to split up and search. However, that would lead to an unavoidable problem. There was a limit to the number of people present. Once they separated, there would only be 3 Fiend Kings in each palace door. If they encountered Desolate Marshal who wielded the Hell Suppression Tripod, they might even be killed instead. The many Fiend Kings present were meticulous, and did not express anything. Fiend King Lu Tsang pondered for a moment and analyzed. According to this setup, there should only be a single way out of the 9 palace doors. It's fine as long as we determine which one is the right one. If Desolate Marshal and Demoness G chose the wrong path, they'll definitely die without us even attacking. If they were lucky enough to choose the right path, we'll definitely be able to catch up to them still. Exactly. Fiend King Hidden Space nodded. There are a total of 9 palace doors. Which should we choose? Don't you have the Apocalyptic Fiend diagram with you? Take it out and see if there are any clues on it. Fiend King Lu Tsung said. Fiend King Hidden Space was enlightened and hurriedly took out the complete Apocalyptic Fiend diagram. Hidden Space and Lu Tsung focused their gazes. There was indeed some guidance left behind on the Fiend diagram. The 4th palace door on the right. Hidden Space and Lu Tsung exchanged glances and charged towards the palace door with the 4 Fiend Kings of Firmament Ascension Palace. Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the other Fiend Kings did not dare to enter recklessly. They exchanged glances and followed behind the Fiend Kings of Firmament Ascension Palace. After the Martial Dao Prime Body and Demoness G entered the palace door, they continued forward. Before long, another hall appeared before them. Similarly, there were 9 palace doors and the 2 of them were faced with a choice once more. They took out the Apocalyptic Fiend diagram and compared it. The 2 of them quickly made a judgment and headed towards the palace door in the middle. There were no dangers along the way. After speeding for a while, the 2 of them arrived at yet another hall with 9 palace doors around them. Are we just taking detours? Demoness G frowned slightly. No. The Martial Dao Prime Body had a calm expression. There were murals around the 3 halls earlier on and the murals in each hall were different. Alright, let's continue then. The 2 of them entered a palace door according to the guidance of the Fiend diagram. With that, the 2 of them would meet the same choices each time they arrived somewhere else. On the other side, the Fiend Kings experienced an extremely similar encounter. However, the 2 parties grew increasingly distant in this gigantic and complicated chamber, and did not meet. Finally, after passing by the 9th hall, the Martial Dao Prime Body and Demoness G arrived at an empty chamber with a circular dome. The chamber was sealed and there was no other way out. In the middle was a gigantic coffin that was half the height of a human. Apart from that, there was nothing else. When she saw the coffin, Demoness G suddenly laughed and turned to look at the Martial Dao Prime Body with sparkling eyes. What are you laughing at? The Martial Dao Prime Body asked. I suddenly thought of something. Demoness G smiled brightly. Do you still remember when we first met in Tianhuang mainland and I invited you to the inheritance ground of the Fiend Sex? The Martial Dao Prime Body had a dazed expression and recalled the past instantly. Demoness G smiled. At that time, we came to the depths of the ground and saw a coffin as well. Wasn't it similar to this scene before us? The Martial Dao Prime Body nodded slightly and turned to exchange glances with Demoness G. An indescribable feeling rose in their hearts at the same time. In the lower worlds, When the two of them first met, they entered the underground together and saw a stone coffin. After ascending to the upper world, the first time the two of them met, they ran underground and saw a coffin. However, at that time, the coffin was coiled with chains and floated in the blood pool with monk damning sealed within. The surroundings were filled with blood chi and the atmosphere was terrifying. It was different from the silence before them. Demoness G continued. At that time, a fiend appeared in that coffin and went on a massacre. The two of us had to hide in the stone coffin in the end to escape the calamity. At that time, the two of them were squeezed in that cramped stone coffin, and it was inevitable that their skin would touch in a lustful manner. When Demoness G mentioned this, the martial Tao Prime body recalled the scene but did not reply. Demoness G smiled and said in a half-joking manner, Hey, do you think something will happen here as well? For example, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse might revive and crawl out from that coffin. If that's the case, both of us will have to die. The martial Tao Prime body interrupted her directly. A Fiend Emperor will kill us the same way he crushes two ants. Demoness G stuck out her tongue and no longer let her imagination run wild. At that moment, the two of them relaxed after escaping from the pursuit behind them, and were in no hurry to look at the coffin. Demoness G glanced at the martial Tao Prime body again and suddenly asked, What did you mean by bringing me home? At the mention of that, the martial Tao Prime body's heart skipped a beat as he asked, I was about to ask you. Although Tianhuang sect is located in a remote corner, my reputation and Tianhuang sects over the years should have spread to every corner of the Fiend domain. Haven't you heard of it in Firmament Ascension Palace? The battle where Desolate Marshal killed the million-strong Fiend army and the Supreme Perfected Fiend alone had already spread through the heavenly world. It was impossible for Demoness G, who was in Firmament Ascension Palace, to not have heard of it. Of course I have, Demoness G said. The martial Tao Prime body asked, Why didn't you look for us then? Demoness G pouted her lips and said helplessly, After I ascended, I was entangled by Ling Xian, and he insisted on cultivating with me. As such, I could only try my best to delay him. Even if I heard the news of Tianhuang sect, I wouldn't dare to look for you. Firmament Ascension Palace has a Fiend Emperor holding down the fort, and is terrifyingly strong. I was worried that if I had looked for you guys, Tianhuang sect might be implicated and the Fiend Emperor will vent his anger on you. The martial Tao Prime body remained silent. Although this matter was indeed a little troublesome, it was inevitable right now. Even if he did not kill Ling Xian earlier on, there was no way the prince would let them off. If the Fiend Emperor was truly provoked, he could only release divine powers with Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath and shift Tianhuang sect to Avicii temporarily to hide for a period of time. In the 9 Firmament Immortal domain, there were 9 immortal emperors presiding over the 9 immortal domains. There were definitely other immortal emperors in the darkness of the 9 Firmament Immortal domain that resided in seclusion. Together, there were definitely more than 10 of them. It was the same for the Pure Land of Bliss. There was naturally no way Ling Xiao was the only Fiend Emperor in the Fiend domain. However, for the other Fiend Emperors, in order to pursue the Great Tao, they either lived in seclusion in the mountains or roamed everywhere. The only one who established a faction like this was Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao. The focus of the Fiend Tao was on taking the unorthodox path and being obsessed. They sought freedom to be unfettered, disregarding all etiquette and rules. Although establishing a faction could rule over millions of territories and possess torrential power, it would also tie oneself down and was vastly different from what the Fiend Tao wanted. It did not matter whether the Fiend Emperor cared for the lives of the fiends of his faction under his lead, it was inevitable that countless karma would be involved. That was the reason why most Fiend Emperors chose to roam the world alone. Chapter 2538 Destruction 2538 Destruction. What are you thinking about? You haven't answered my question. Demoness G nudged the martial Tao Prime body gently and urged. The martial Tao Prime body snapped out of his stupor. The reason why Tianhuang sect was established was so that those who ascended from the lower worlds could have a place to live in peace. You're from Tianhuang mainland. Tianhuang sect is naturally your home. Tisk. Demoness G pouted her lips and could not conceal the disappointment in her eyes. Displeased with that answer, she muttered, "A home is a place where the family is." The martial Dao Prime body was silent for a moment. "Yaoyan, you can treat me as family from now on." Demoness G's heart skipped a beat. In a flash, she closed into Su Zimo and tiptoed gently. The two of them faced each other and exchanged glances. Suddenly, she reached out and removed the silver mask on the face of the martial Dao Prime body. Demoness G did not feel any joy when she saw that calm and familiar face. Instead, she felt uneasy. "Why aren't you dodging?" Demoness G frowned. If it was back in Tianhuang mainland, Su Zimo would have avoided her intimate actions a long time ago. Demoness G finally noticed the abnormality of the martial Dao Prime body, and the indescribable uneasiness in her heart intensified. She seemed to have understood something but did not dare to think about it carefully. "Why are you suddenly so nice to me?" Demoness G asked again. Although Su Zimo treated her well in Tianhuang mainland as well, he would not protect her as much as he did today. In fact, he did not even permit Ling Xian to call her a slut. The martial Dao Prime body remained silent. "What did you just call me?" Demoness G's voice was already trembling slightly. Yaoyan, that was her name. However, ever since the two of them met, Su Zimo had always referred to her as a demoness, and had never addressed her as such. Although the term sounded intimate, it sounded distant. The two of them were silent in the still chamber. Demoness G bit her lip tightly. After a long time, she asked slowly, "My sister. She's already dead, right?" Through her cultivation technique, Demoness G was best at bewitching her opponents and controlling their minds. Naturally, many people could not hide their thoughts from her either. She was sharp and quickly realized that there was only a single possibility why Su Zimo would suddenly treat her so well out of the blue. Yaoxue was already dead. It was more like guilt and compensation. Su Zimo would replace Yaoxue and continue to protect and take care of her in the future. Su Zimo had just said that she could treat him as family from now on because he had already regarded her as his younger sister. The martial Dao Prime body did not meet Demoness G's eyes. He wore the Mara mask once more and whispered, "Yaoxue's cultivation was stuck at the void reversion realm and she was not able to break through. Eventually, she exhausted her lifespan." Upon hearing the news, Demoness G felt a sense of sadness as tears rolled down her fair face silently. Before long, her clothes were drenched. The joy of reuniting with Su Zimo vanished instantly. Part of the sadness was because she heard that Yaoxue had passed on. Another part was because she realized the relationship between her and Su Zimo had changed. From now on, Su Zimo would view her as his younger sister, and it seemed like they were even closer. However, it might seem even more distant for her. Actually, Demoness G had never harbored any hope towards any outcome with Su Zimo. Even if Su Zimo became Dao companions with her sister, she would wish him well from the bottom of her heart and leave silently. However, after understanding Su Zimo's inner thoughts, she still felt a sense of disappointment. After a long time, Demoness G sniffed and rolled her eyes at the martial Dao Prime body. "I hope that my sister will be able to find a good husband in her next life and never meet a heartless person like you again." Humph. Next life. The martial Dao Prime body recalled that Yaoxue did not age at all when she passed away. At the thought of that empty tomb, he could not help but mutter softly in a daze. Yaoxue was only a void reversion Dao being. Could there really be a next life? If there is, where is she now? At that moment, the martial Dao Prime body suddenly had the urge to disregard everything and head to the netherworld. Perhaps, he might be able to find traces of Yaoxue there. However, Heavenly Wolf once said that no one who was alive could enter the netherworld. "Let's see what's in this coffin." Demoness G perked up and waved at the martial Dao Prime body before heading towards the gigantic coffin in the middle of the chamber. The martial Dao Prime body suppressed his thoughts about Yaoxue for the time being and came to the coffin. If Fiend Emperor Apocalypse had any legacy preserved back then, it should be in this coffin. "Make way." The martial Dao Prime body gestured for Demoness G to retreat to the entrance of the chamber. If anything happened, she could escape at any moment. Demoness G obeyed and stood at the entrance of the chamber. The martial Tao prime body stood in front of the coffin and exhaled. Exerting strength in his arms, he pushed the lid of the coffin to the side slowly. The lid of the coffin was way too heavy. Even with the physique and bloodline of the martial Tao prime body, his full strength was only enough to move the lid. There was a loud bang. The lid of the coffin fell to the ground. In a flash, the martial Tao prime body arrived at the entrance of the chamber, and looked towards the coffin from this location. After a while, there was no reaction from the coffin. Hee, you're worrying too much. Demoness G patted the shoulder of the martial Tao prime body and teased. What do you mean by the resurrection of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse? I was just scaring you earlier on. Why did you take it for real? The reason why the martial Tao prime body was so careful was not because of Demoness G's words. He merely felt that something was amiss right from the beginning. The reason why this Fiend Emperor's tomb was discovered was because the black fiend diagram in his hands had undergone a change and deliberately attracted a group of fiends here. However, almost nothing was discovered here. In fact, there weren't even any danger. The martial Tao prime body and Demoness G walked forward and leaped. Standing at the edge of the coffin, they looked inside and could not help but freeze slightly. There was only a pitch-black gigantic axe in the coffin. Apart from the gigantic axe, there were no other treasures. The martial Tao prime body even specially looked around the chamber, inside and outside the coffin, even inside and outside the lid, but he could not find any words. Fiend Emperor Apocalypse only left behind a gigantic axe after his death? I got it! Demoness G's eyes lit up. It said that when Fiend Emperor Apocalypse was born, his body was already burning with the flames of war and his eyes were filled with destruction. A phenomenon descended from the skies. The pursuit of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse is to tread on the heavens and conquer all worlds. Everywhere he passes, the flames of war will spread and destroy the world. It's said that the two Emperor weapons used by Fiend Emperor Apocalypse are called Flames of War and Destruction. Flames of War was a spear while Destruction was a gigantic axe. If I'm not wrong, this gigantic axe should be the destruction axe that belonged to Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. Stepping on the heavens, conquering all worlds. The martial Tao prime body frowned slightly. Fiend Emperor Apocalypse was so powerful? Very strong and extremely violent and belligerent, Demoness G said. Back then, the heavenly world was completely occupied by him. The abyss between the 9 firmament immortal domain and the fiend domain was split open by his destruction axe. The martial Tao prime body was secretly speechless. Almost splitting the entire heavenly world into two was indeed a little terrifying. Even Emperor Bo-sun, who was in his peak condition back then, might not have been able to do it. However, even such a ruthless person did not manage to become a great emperor in the end and could not escape death. Chapter 2539 2539 Change 2539 Change. The martial Tao prime body had not cultivated to that stage after all and did not know the insurmountable distance between an emperor and a great emperor. However, he had already realized that although there was only a single word difference between the two, the difference was like heaven and earth. Even with Dai Yu's capabilities, she could only be referred to as a demon empress and was not at the level of a great emperor. Everything else aside, Emperor Bo-sun alone and Fiend Emperor Apocalypse from tens of millions of years ago were all extremely talented and renowned ruthless people. However, none of those emperors could reach that level in the end. Up till this point of his cultivation, the martial Tao prime body had only heard of two great emperors, Great Emperor Longevity and Great Emperor Infinite. Although the Apocalyptic Fiend Sutra was strong and was said to be comparable to the taboo mystic classics, it was not at the level of the taboo mystic classics. That was because Fiend Emperor Apocalypse did not manage to take that final step and become a great emperor even till his death. Heavenly Wolf once said that there was only a single great emperor in an era. One great emperor. Ever since Great Emperor Longevity passed away, a great emperor had not been born for a long time. In this generation, paragons rose and monster incarnates appeared. Even a powerful emperor like Bo-sun appeared once more and descended into the mortal world. In this generation, there was Bo-sun, Dai-yu, and even more emperors. There were at least 30 emperors in the heavenly world alone. Of course, within the trichiliocosm, there was a difference in strength, and some weaker worlds might only have 1 or 2 emperors. Some of them were stronger like the heavenly world and had dozens of emperors. Even among so many emperors, there could only be a single great emperor in the end. The martial Tao Prime Body did not know which of the emperors would be able to look down on the world and create a brand new era. He was far from that level. However, he knew that the distance between him and Dai-yu was getting closer. One day, he would catch up to Dai-yu and walk shoulder to shoulder with her. There were many reasons why the martial Tao Prime Body had not looked for Dai-yu all these years. Firstly, his cultivation realm was not high enough. Although he had entered the true martial realm and attracted a 10th tribulation, at the end of the day, he was still only a perfected fiend. Even if he went to look for Dai-yu, he would not be of much help and might even incur her contempt. He could not get over his internal struggles either. Secondly, he had yet to completely resolve the matters here after establishing Tianhuang sect. Tianhuang sect only had a single Grotto Heaven realm expert, and was relatively weak. Thirdly, his martial Tao was not perfected yet. It was extremely difficult to deduce and perfect the martial Tao, and the chances of that were slim. When he saw Dai-yu, his mental state would naturally change, and it would be difficult for him to focus all his attention on deducing the martial Tao. The martial Tao Prime Body did not dare to be distracted. If he could not deduce and perfect the martial Tao, his Tao would stop here. Even if he met Dai-yu in the future, there would be nothing to be proud of. There was no way he could even help her or stand shoulder to shoulder with her. Just as the thoughts of the martial Tao Prime Body were running wild, Demonisji leaped into the coffin and gripped the gigantic black axe with both hands, wanting to lift it. Hiya! However, even though her face was flushed red, the gigantic black axe did not budge at all. After a few consecutive attempts, her arms ached, and she was so tired that she leaned against the inner wall of the coffin. Sliding down slowly, she waved her hand. "No, I can't carry it. Seems like you're the only one who can inherit the opportunity left behind by Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. Let me try," the martial Tao Prime Body said and leaped into the coffin as well. Gripping the handle of the gigantic axe with one hand, he exerted strength and wanted to lift the ladder up. However, the gigantic black axe was still motionless, as though it was embedded at the bottom of the coffin. The martial Tao Prime Body frowned slightly. Even minor Grotto Heaven Fiend Kings would not be able to withstand this burst strength he just released. Even then, it was not enough to lift the gigantic axe. "So weak!" Demonisji snickered with a teasing expression. The martial Tao Prime Body took a deep breath and put away the black fiend diagram casually. He squatted down and gripped the handle of the gigantic axe with both hands, lifting it upwards. Finally, the gigantic black axe moved. However, it was almost negligible and was merely lifted slightly. How could this be? The martial Tao Prime Body was puzzled. Even emperor weapons of the past could not possess such weight after tens of millions of years, and the spirit consciousness within had long been destroyed. Right then, a black streak of light flew out from the storage bag of the martial Tao Prime Body and landed on the handle of the gigantic axe. It was the black fiend diagram formed by the 9 incomplete diagrams. At that moment, it was wrapped around the handle of the gigantic black axe, circle after circle. The next moment, there was a boom. The gigantic black axe actually flew up on its own and looked down from above, as though a fiend body that was 100,000 feet tall was standing behind it. The head of the body was faintly visible in the clouds, and its gigantic palm wielded the gigantic black axe. 2 ferocious gazes burst forth from the clouds and locked onto the martial Tao Prime Body and Demonisji in the coffin. Phew! The gigantic black axe descended from the skies and cleaved down at the 2 people in the coffin in an incomparably ferocious manner. Before the axe blade descended, an unimaginable might had already enveloped the 2 of them. the gigantic black axe sealed all escape routes for the two of them. Pissed. It was way too ferocious. Against that axe, the flesh of the martial Dao Prime body felt a sharp pain. Demoness Ji could not withstand the pressure, and a blood mist sprayed out from her body. Her expression dimmed and her body went limp. Right now, it was too late for him to escape from this place with Demoness Ji. With a single thought from the martial Dao Prime body, the Hell Suppression tripod flew out from his glabella. The martial Dao Prime body turned the Hell Suppression tripod upside down and pulled Demoness Ji under the tripod. At the same time, crackling sounds came from his body. The martial Dao Prime body transformed his bones and curled up, giving most of the tripod's space to Demoness Ji. It was as though everything was predestined. This scene resembled the moment when the two of them met with danger in Tianhuang mainland. Although there was no fiend resurrected in this coffin, it was clear that the gigantic black axe wanted their lives as well. Furthermore, the two of them had nowhere to run and huddled together once more, hiding in the coffin under the Hell Suppression tripod. However, this time round, neither of them had any other thoughts. The gigantic black axe wanted to kill them, and this power was far beyond what the martial Dao Prime body could withstand. What if the Hell Suppression tripod could not defend against it? Boom! The gigantic black axe descended and struck the bottom of the Hell Suppression tripod with a loud bang. Without hesitation, the martial Dao Prime body reached out hurriedly and covered Demoness Ji's ears. The Hell Suppression tripod trembled violently and buzzed endlessly. The martial Dao Prime body shuddered and felt a sharp pain in his ears. Unknowingly, scarlet blood seeped out. When Demoness Ji saw that, she had a worried expression and reached out instinctively, covering the ears of the martial Dao Prime body tightly. The two of them exchanged glances. Both of them knew in their hearts that if the gigantic black axe continued slashing down, they would die from the impact even if the Hell Suppression tripod could defend against it. If only there was an underground river beneath this fiend cave. Demoness Ji's imagination ran wild. Back in Tianhuang mainland, the two of them hid in that stone coffin and only managed to escape after falling into the underground river. Chapter 2540 Great Empress 9 Nether. 2540 Great Empress 9 Nether. Before the two of them could react, the gigantic black axe slashed down once more, as though it would not stop until the two of them were dead. Boom! Accompanied by a loud bang, the Hell Suppression tripod's handles pierced the bottom of the coffin and cracks appeared on the ground. The figures of the martial Dao Prime body and Demoness Ji suddenly sank. The expression of the martial Dao Prime body changed. Suddenly, he realized that the chamber was not on the ground and there seemed to be another world beneath. Without hesitation, the gigantic black axe could slash down once more at any moment. The martial Dao Prime body took a deep breath and exerted strength in his legs, stomping his feet. Bang! Boom! The ground beneath their feet had long been shattered by the Hell Suppression tripod. Now that the martial Dao Prime body stomped on it, it collapsed instantly and the two of them and the Hell Suppression tripod fell rapidly. The surroundings were dark. However, after entering this space, the martial Dao Prime body and Demoness Ji felt the power that was initially suppressed on their essence spirits dissipate at the same time. The space beneath the chamber seemed to have escaped the range of the Fiend Emperor's tomb and divine powers and secret skills could be released. The two of them stabilized themselves hurriedly, and the martial Dao Prime body was relieved. As long as he broke free from the restrictions of the Fiend Emperor's tomb, he could make use of the Hell Suppression tripod to break through the void and escape with Demoness Ji. However, he was in no hurry. Instead, he retracted the Hell Suppression tripod and looked up through the entrance of the chamber above him. The strange thing was that the incomparably ferocious gigantic black axe that was chasing him to the ground of the chamber came to a sudden stop. After a brief pause, the gigantic black axe turned and left, vanishing. The actions of the gigantic black axe caused the martial Dao Prime body to frown. He felt that something was amiss and felt uneasy. It was pitch black beneath the chamber. Even with the eyesight of the martial Dao Prime body, he could only see around 10 feet in front of him. Although he could release his spirit consciousness, the range of his detection could not exceed 10 feet. The two of them descended slowly, and nothing could be seen around them. It was extremely quiet and dead. Thankfully, not long after, the two of them landed on the ground once more and felt slightly relieved. What was up with the destruction axe earlier on? Demoness G could not help but ask. It was buried for tens of millions of years. To think that it could release such a terrifying power right after escaping. It's probably related to that apocalyptic fiend diagram. The Martial Tao Prime Body said deeply. You once said that Fiend Emperor Apocalypse died and his skin scattered before his death, forming 18 incomplete diagrams. I'm guessing that the aura of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse is still lingering on the fiend diagrams. That was why the guards in the ancient city did not dare to attack us. The destruction axe only awakened completely after it sensed the aura of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse as well. Demoness G was still puzzled and asked. However, why would the destruction axe attack us? Did the apocalyptic fiend diagram change this time round so that it could lure us here to awaken the Emperor weapon? The Martial Tao Prime Body shook his head. He had many questions about this matter as well. However, he could guess one thing. If he was not wrong, the apocalyptic fiend diagram in the hands of Fiend King hid in space, and the others should be guiding them to another Emperor weapon, the Flames of War Spear. As for those Fiend Kings, they would also face the attacks of the Flames of War Spear. The two of them walked together and scanned ahead slowly. Suddenly, Su Zimo thought of something and asked. Right, I noticed that your movement technique is a little special and your bewitchment technique is even stronger than before. Did you obtain any opportunities? Ever since the Green Lotus True Body ascended, he had obtained countless opportunities and encounters before cultivating to become a Grade 7 Heaven Immortal. As for Demoness G, she was actually a Grade 5 Heaven Immortal right now. It was clear that she had obtained unimaginable opportunities as well. Of course, what surprised the Martial Tao Prime Body even more was that Demoness G's movement technique was extremely similar to the black-robed woman he faced when he received the true martial 10th tribulation. Demoness G nodded. I obtained the inheritance memories of an ancient great emperor. Wah! The Martial Tao Prime Body was speechless. The Green Lotus True Body merely obtained the Tripod Hell Suppression Tripod and the Taboo Mystic Classic within. As for Demoness G, she obtained the inheritance memories of an ancient great emperor directly. The Green Lotus True Body was cultivating the Prajna Nirvana Sutra and often encountered questions. Up till now, he still had two secret skills that he could not comprehend completely. However, no one could explain it to him, and he could only figure out his cultivation on his own. On Demoness G's side, it was equivalent to a great emperor imparting the Dharmic Tao personally. How could her cultivation speed not be fast? Which great emperor was it? The Martial Tao Prime Body asked. Throughout history, there had not been many great emperors recorded together. Up till now, he had only heard of two. Demoness G said. According to this great emperor, she was in an extremely ancient era. You might not have heard of her, but she's known as Great Empress 9 Nether. Great Empress 9 Nether. The Martial Tao Prime Body murmured softly and asked. Is Great Empress 9 Nether a woman? Yes. Demoness G nodded and looked at Su Zimo in surprise. After all, it was difficult to associate the title of Great Empress 9 Nether with a woman. The Martial Tao Prime Body asked again. Does this woman wear black and wield a long sword? How do you know? Demoness G's face was filled with disbelief. It was a coincidence that I was lucky enough to witness this senior's glory in the past. The Martial Tao Prime Body did not explain in detail. Demoness G said. This senior is a woman. Before she became a great emperor, she was known as the 9 Nether Pure Maiden. The 9 Nether Pure Maiden Sutra she created is one of the taboo mystic classics. The Martial Tao Prime Body nodded. It seemed like Demoness G had already learned the taboo mystic classic. Right then, Demoness G did not notice and staggered, almost falling. The Martial Tao Prime Body supported her hurriedly. What is it? Demoness G frowned slightly and looked down. Earlier on, she felt like she had kicked something. A dark yellow mud bump appeared on the ground beneath her feet, looking extremely abrupt like a tomb. Demoness G harumphed softly and stomped twice heavily, muttering, "How dare you trip me!" Right then, Demoness G paused in her actions and froze on the spot, her flawless face filled with fear. "What's wrong?" The martial Tao Prime body sensed Demoness G's abnormality but did not think too much about it, and merely asked casually. After all, Demoness G was quirky and playful. Perhaps she had faked this scene on purpose. Suzimo. Someone just blew a at the back of my head. Demoness G's voice was trembling, and she even sounded like she was about to cry. It was clear that she was extremely afraid, and her expression did not seem fake. However, the martial Tao Prime body did not sense any danger in the surroundings, nor did his spirit perception warn him. Hee hee! Right then, a sinister laughter sounded out of nowhere beside the two of them. "Miss, you've stepped on my tomb." Chapter 2541 Goes to Immortal. 2541 Goes to Immortal. Accompanied by that sinister voice, a menacing and terrifying face gradually appeared in the darkness behind Demoness G. The martial Tao Prime body was alarmed and did not have time to think. He pulled Demoness G over and shielded her behind him, glaring at the figure that appeared slowly in the darkness with a grim expression. He looked like an old man covered in blood. His face was pale and there was no life in him, resembling a malevolent ghost. No matter the old man's background, the fact that he could hide from the spirit perception of the martial Tao Prime body was enough to shock him and make him on guard. "To think that two little children would come here! Hee hee!" The old man let out an unpleasant laughter once more. His grin extended to the back of his ears, as though it was splitting his entire head into two. "Could it be a ghost, Immortal?" Demoness G gradually calmed down as she panted and said with a trembling voice. "Ghost, Immortal?" The martial Tao Prime body's heart skipped a beat. Back in the Emperor's tomb, the Green Lotus True body encountered a ghost Immortal who was extremely powerful and nearly died inside. Thankfully, he managed to survive with the help of the Soul Lantern. Demoness G continued. "However, according to the inheritance memories given to me by Great Empress 9 Nether, the conditions for the formation of ghost immortals are extremely special. At the very least, an emperor has to die. Only the powerful grievances of emperors could turn them into ghost immortals. Back then, the Green Lotus True body was only at the Black Immortal realm and did not know much about ghost immortals. The information he had was not accurate enough, and he merely heard a bit about them from Phone Z. He thought that ghost immortals were formed by the death of experts whose souls refused to enter reincarnation due to their grievances. Furthermore, they cultivated their own sentience. To think that the prerequisite for the formation of a ghost immortal was for an emperor to die. In that case, it could explain why there was such a ghost immortal in the emperor's tomb. It was said that the formation of the emperor's tomb was the death of an immortal emperor. Later on, other emperors took the risk to enter the emperor's tomb and were inevitably cursed and buried there. Demoness G continued. However, emperor experts are considered as peak existences of the upper world, and it's extremely difficult for them to perish, let alone die violently. How can there be an emperor here? At that point, Demoness G's voice stopped abruptly. Suddenly, she recalled that there was indeed an emperor buried here, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. Could this be the final resting place of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse? Naturally, the martial Tao Prime body thought of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse right away as well. However, he was still puzzled. He had a feeling that the dark space here was out of place with the tomb of the Fiend Emperor above, as though they were two different worlds. Above the chamber, within the radius of the Fiend Emperor's tomb, grotto heavens could not be released and their divine powers and secret skills were sealed. However, the two of them were almost completely unaffected here. At that moment, he did not have time to analyze carefully when the ghost immortal opposite him suddenly took a deep breath towards the two of them. The martial Tao Prime body felt his mind go adrift, and his essence spirit felt a powerful suction force that was about to pull it out of his body. Thankfully, the power of the Mara mask burst forth and blocked his essence spirit, allowing him to regain consciousness instantly. However, Demoness G's cultivation realm was insufficient, and she could not defend against the devouring power at all. A wisp of her essence spirit left her orifice and flew towards the ghost immortal opposite her. Against such ghost immortals, none of the dermic das of the martial Tao prime body could cause much damage to them. However, he had a treasure that could kill the ghost immortal. Using his robes, the martial Tao prime body swept up a dim bronze lantern from his storage bag and smashed it towards the ghost immortal opposite him. Hee hee. The old man gave a strange laugh and reached out for the old bronze lantern with his withered palm. Kid, you can't hurt me, arg! Before the old man could finish, he suddenly shrieked. It was already too late for him to dodge and shake off the soul lantern. Right in front of the martial Tao prime body, the old man transformed into streaks of light that entered the bronze lantern and vanished completely. The bottom of the bronze lantern had clearly gained another layer of oil. Back then, the ghost immortal in the Emperor's tomb merely touched the soul lantern with his walking stick and was almost sucked to death by it. For this ghost immortal who dared to reach out with his hands, he did not even have the chance to escape. Demoness G's essence spirit returned to her consciousness once more. She looked in the direction where the old man disappeared with lingering fear. Demoness G heaved a sigh of relief. To think that there would be a ghost immortal beneath this chamber. I wonder what happened to Fiend Emperor Apocalypse back then to cause him to die here with such deep resentment. Something's not right. The martial Tao prime body retracted his bronze lantern and murmured with a frown. Why? Demoness G was puzzled. The martial Tao prime body said, the tomb of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse above was exquisitely set up. It's clear that he was prepared. If he had died violently, why would there be this tomb here? As the martial Tao prime body spoke, he glanced from the corner of his eye and suddenly realized that Demoness G was looking behind him with a horrified and pale expression. In the darkness behind the martial Tao prime body, a figure appeared slowly and approached silently like a ghost. It was a menacing face that resembled a malevolent ghost. It opened its mouth in the darkness and wanted to devour the head of the martial Tao prime body. Another ghost immortal. Throughout the entire process, there was no reaction from the spirit perception of the martial Tao prime body. Hurry and escape! Demoness G shrieked and lunged towards the ghost immortal in the darkness behind the martial Tao prime body without hesitation. When the martial Tao prime body noticed the strange expression on Demoness G's face, he realized that he was in immense danger. His surroundings were pitch black and he might not be safe no matter where he hid. The martial Tao prime body's reaction was extremely fast. His spirit consciousness moved and released a martial spirit fire that entered the lantern of the soul lantern. Phew! The soul lantern was ignited instantly and burned with a tiny golden flame. The light extended and enveloped his surroundings. Ah! The ghost immortal behind him seemed to be severely injured by the golden light, and golden flames surged from his body, unable to be extinguished. Soul! The ghost immortal only had time to say a single word before he was enveloped by the golden flames and devoured. His essence spirit was destroyed and his soul dissipated into nothingness. Demoness G paused in her tracks and looked at everything in shock. She had not expected that the seemingly unassuming bronze lantern in the hands of the martial Tao prime body would be so powerful. Ghost immortals did not have true flesh and blood. In reality, they were formed from souls and resentment. This treasure, the soul lantern, was the nemesis of these ghost immortals. The essence spirits of the martial Tao prime body and Demoness G were in their consciousnesses and were protected by their bodies. When the soul lantern was ignited, it was filled with a golden glow, and did not cause them any harm. What's going on? Why are there two ghost immortals here? Should we leave quickly? Demoness G's face was pale as a sheet. She felt uneasy and increasingly felt that this place was sinister. The surrounding darkness seemed to be filled with an indescribably terrifying aura. The martial Tao prime body had a grim expression as he rolled up the soul lantern in his hands and suddenly threw it into the surrounding darkness. Ah! 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 The golden light dispersed the darkness and dozens of ghostly figures appeared instantly. letting out a series of tragic cries as they squeezed and retreated, wanting to avoid the light of the soul lantern. When she saw that, Demoness G's expression changed starkly, and she shuddered. There were dozens of ghost immortals hiding in the darkness over there. Chapter 2542 2542 Tomb of Emperors. 2542 Tomb of Emperors. Some of the ghost immortals who were slower to dodge were affected by the golden light of the soul lantern, and golden flames ignited in their bodies, turning them into ashes before long. The martial Tao Prime body's heart skipped a beat. He merely probed the darkness over there out of cautiousness earlier on. To think that there would be dozens of ghost immortals. The martial Tao Prime body had a grim gaze as he swept up the soul lantern and surveyed the surrounding darkness. Ah! 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 Instantly, tragic cries sounded from the surrounding darkness. In all directions, ghostly figures could be seen fleeing in all directions from the soul lantern's radiance. Psst! This time round, even the martial Tao Prime body felt a chill run down his spine and his hair stood on end. After spinning with the soul lantern earlier on, he saw hundreds of ghost immortals. It was hard to imagine that there were so many ghost immortals hidden in the darkness around the two of them, waiting for an opportunity to strike silently. If not for the soul lantern in his hands, the two of them would have been torn apart by the ghost immortals earlier on. More than that, he was shocked and wondered what sort of a place this was beneath the chamber that could produce so many ghost immortals. Could it be that the hundreds of ghost immortals were formed from the death of emperors? Could there be hundreds of emperors buried beneath the chamber? That speculation was way too terrifying. Even the martial Tao Prime body felt chills run down his spine when he thought about it. At the side, Demoness G was already dumbfounded and speechless. Hundreds of ghost immortals meant that hundreds of emperors had died here. What sort of a concept was that? The martial Tao Prime body took a deep breath and composed himself rapidly. No matter what, he had to get rid of the ghost immortals first. Otherwise, letting them hide in the darkness would be too much of a threat to the two of them. At that thought, the martial Tao Prime body rolled up the soul lantern and placed it in front of him, blowing hard at the oil in the lantern. The oil of the soul lantern splattered everywhere and scattered on the ground, purging away the surrounding darkness instantly. Soul lantern! It's the soul lantern! Many ghost immortals shrieked and fled into the darkness. Many ghost immortals were enveloped by the golden flames and burned into nothingness before long, vanishing completely. The martial Tao Prime body brought Demoness G and swept up the soul lantern before chasing after the remaining ghost immortals. As the two of them advanced, the light of the soul lantern purged away the darkness, and rows of mud bumps could be seen on the ground beneath their feet. Although there were no tombstones or markings, both of them could tell that the mounds were simple tombs. The plot of tombs was not too big, and the terrain was in the shape of a long coffin. Hundreds of ghost immortals had nowhere to hide in the coffin-shaped tomb. The martial Tao Prime body caught up to them quickly and killed them all with the soul lantern. The souls of those emperors did not dissipate and gathered resentment, forming strange living beings like the ghost immortals. They were trapped here and could not see the light of day all year round, unable to enter reincarnation. For them, death in the hands of the martial Tao Prime body was a form of relief. After getting rid of all the ghost immortals here, the soul lantern absorbed a large number of souls and the oil was completely filled. The radius of light expanded significantly, and illuminated the entire space. The martial Tao Prime body and Demoness G turned back and saw unassuming tombs scattered among them along the way. However, they were filled with an indescribable might and shock. Although the plot of tombs was not big, there were more than 1,000 tombs buried here. Furthermore, those tombs might all be the tombs of emperors. Not all emperors would transform into ghost immortals after their deaths. Therefore, although there were more than 1,000 emperor tombs here, there were only a few hundred ghost immortals. Even so, this scene had a huge impact on the mental states of the martial Tao Prime body and Demoness G. Who would have thought that there were so many emperor tombs beneath the tomb of the Fiend Emperor above? What happened back then to cause more than 1,000 emperors to die here? If these emperor experts came from the same era, it meant that more than half of the emperors of this era might be buried here. What was up with these emperor tombs? Back when Fiend Emperor Apocalypse established his tomb above, did he know of this situation beneath? In the mind of the martial Dao Prime Body, he could not help but recall the turmoil that affected the trichiliocosm that book Immortal Yunzhu mentioned to the Green Lotus True Body. At that time, Yunzhu was not sure if the chaos existed either because almost all the records of the chaos had been erased, leaving only some blurry records. Could the tragic death of the emperors have something to do with that chaos? Countless questions flashed through the minds of the martial Dao Prime Body and Demoness G. The two of them stood on the spot for a long time. Demoness G seemed to have thought of something and frowned, trying her best to recall. The martial Dao Prime Body turned around and looked at the end of the plot of tombs where a thick steel dozens of feet tall stood. The steel looked ancient and heavy, emanating a deathly aura of time. It was blank with nothing on it. A thought flashed through the mind of the martial Dao Prime Body as he looked at the gigantic steel. Although there were no markings on the steel, it gave him a feeling that it was more like a tombstone that was used to suppress this place. He did not know who established the tombstone, but it could resolve a doubt in his heart. It might be because of that tombstone that the hundreds of ghost immortals were suppressed here and could not escape. Right then, a loud bang sounded from the easternmost side of the chamber, as though a huge battle had broken out above. Bang! Boom! The tomb of the Fiend Emperor above was shaking violently, and could collapse at any moment. The martial Dao Prime Body and Demoness G hid in the chamber at the bottom and would not be implicated. If I'm not wrong, Hidden Space and the others must have discovered the Flames of War spear. The martial Dao Prime Body murmured softly. Right then, dark clouds gathered in the firmaments outside and Fiend Chi coiled. A pair of gigantic eyes were hidden in the clouds as they glared at Bayin Mountain with a terrifying might. The fiends around Bayin Mountain were shocked and knelt on the ground one after another, shivering. Even Grotto Heaven Realm Fiend Kings who sensed the aura from the firmaments did not dare to hesitate and knelt on the ground with reverent expressions. Even they could not defend against that pressure. A Fiend Emperor had appeared. Who killed my son? Fiend Emperor Ling Zhao's voice was filled with suppressed rage that caused one's heart to tremble. His voice reverberated through the skies of the Fiend domain like thunder. In the tomb of the Fiend Emperor, Fiend King Hidden Space and the others had just entered a chamber when something happened. The Flames of War spear appeared and attacked them fiercely. Fiend Emperor Ling Zhao's gaze seemed to be able to penetrate the tomb of the Fiend Emperor and witness such a scene. Suddenly, a gigantic palm extended from the clouds and covered the skies as it grabbed towards the tomb of the Fiend Emperor. Boom! Fiend Emperor Ling Zhao's palm strike almost uprooted the entire Bayin Mountain, and the Fiend Emperor's tomb that was already on the verge of destruction collapsed instantly. The might of a Fiend Emperor was extremely terrifying. Chapter 2543 Descent of Apocalypse. 2543 Descent of Apocalypse. The martial Dao Prime Body summoned the Hell Suppression Tripod, prepared to break through the void and leave with Demoness G. Given the capabilities of the Fiend Emperor, the two of them could not hide for long. If he was discovered by Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao, even if the martial Dao Prime Body could break through the void, he might not be able to return to Avicii under the watch of the latter. Given the power that the Fiend Emperor had just displayed, the martial Dao Prime Body had no doubt that once the two of them were discovered, even if he entered the spatial tunnel, Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao would be able to sever it and capture the two of them. Right then, Demoness G suddenly said, I seem to remember. What? The martial Dao Prime Body asked instinctively. Demoness G said sternly, This tomb beneath Fiend Emperor Apocalypse should be the tomb of a great emperor. The martial Dao Prime Body's heart skipped a beat. Prior to this, who would have thought that there was a tomb of a great emperor hidden beneath the tomb of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse in the depths of Bayin Mountain? However, on second thought, only a great emperor could afford to have 1,000 emperor tombs buried with him. However, he did not know what sort of an existence this great emperor was in the past to be so terrifying as to kill so many emperors. Who is this great emperor? The martial Dao Prime Body asked. Demoness G pursed her lips slightly and hesitated, as though she was wary of something. Right then, a loud bang sounded from the tomb of the Fiend Emperor above. Immediately after, a flare surged into the skies and charged towards Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao, who was in the clouds with a resplendent glow. The flare emitted a scorching and terrifying aura, and the power it released could go against the might of a Fiend Emperor. The majestic power even tore the void apart, leaving clear cracks. "Humph! How dare you act so brazenly without an owner?" Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao harumphed coldly, and a saber shrouded by Fiend Qi suddenly appeared in his palm. It descended from the skies and seemed to split the firmaments into two. Clang! Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao's black saber struck the flare and revealed its true form. It was the Flames of War spear. As for Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao, his body shuddered after being struck by the Flames of War spear. He appeared and stood in midair with a hint of shock in his eyes. Boom! The Flames of War spear fell to the ground and pierced through it, causing spiderweb-like cracks to appear in its surroundings as the ground shook. The flames on the spear intensified. In the Flames of War spear was burned red and almost transparent as its aura rose continuously. The Martial Dao Prime Body and Demoness G exchanged glances and were shocked. To think that this Emperor weapon would release such a terrifying power the moment it was born after being buried for tens of millions of years. Hidden Space and the other Fiend Kings watching below were shocked as well. They could not interfere in a battle of such level. How is that possible? Although Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao was expressionless, his heart stirred. It was just an Emperor weapon. Even if the spirit consciousness within was not destroyed, it could not release such power with no one controlling it. Your master has already died for tens of millions of years. How dare a single weapon like you try to violate my might? Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao glared at the battle spear that burned with raging flames on the ground and hollered. I'm here! Hurry and submit! Everywhere Flames of War goes, the territory shall belong to me. Suddenly, a deep voice sounded from the ruins of the Fiend Emperor's tomb. It contained endless might that could not be disobeyed. Demoness G's heart skipped a beat as she suddenly said, Those were the words of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse in the past. How could? Demoness G did not continue and did not dare to continue thinking. When he heard that, Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao had a grim expression as he glared at the ruins of the Fiend Emperor's tomb and said coldly, Stop pretending. Who are you? Why don't you show yourself? Back then, every time Fiend Emperor Apocalypse conquered a territory, he would throw the Flames of War spear out first. The living beings in the territory only had two choices, submit or escape. If anyone dared to resist, the destruction axe would descend alongside a calamity. Countless living beings would be slaughtered and blood would flow like rivers. Indeed, that action earlier on was in the style of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. However, unless he witnessed it personally, Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao would not believe that Fiend Emperor Apocalypse could survive till now. The lifespans of emperors and great emperors were 10 million years. Even for the one named Great Emperor Longevity, he could not survive for tens of millions of years. You merely cultivated half of my Fiend Sutra and yet you dared to bark in front of me? The deep voice sounded from the ruins of the tomb once more. That statement revealed a greater piece of information that was even more terrifying. The Apocalyptic Fiend Sutra was created by the person who spoke. In that case, the identity of the owner of the voice was obvious. When Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao heard that, he felt a little guilty and glared at the ruins with a bewildered expression. Bang! Boom! In the ruins of the tomb, countless boulders were sent flying as a tall and burly figure stood up slowly. His black hair danced and his eyes were bloodshot as he wielded a gigantic black axe. Although that figure stood in the ruins of the tomb, its aura was even more domineering and terrifying than Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao, who was in the skies. Nobody had seen the appearance of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse before. However, when many people saw that figure, they were certain that it was the ruthless person from tens of millions of years ago, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse himself. The Martial Dao Prime Body had also seen the Black Fiend diagram before. The figure drawn on the Fiend diagram was almost identical to Fiend Emperor Apocalypse before him. How was that possible? Fiend Emperor Apocalypse was not dead. A Fiend Emperor who should have died a long time ago had reappeared in the world tens of millions of years later. All the living beings in the vicinity of Bain Mountain were stunned on the spot by the aura emanated by Fiend Emperor Apocalypse, and did not dare to move. At that moment, any activity could lead to death. The world seemed to have gone silent and the air froze, as though it had stopped. In the great Emperor's tomb, the martial Dao Prime body finally understood something. There was a reason why the Fiend Kings could not release their grotto heavens after entering the Fiend Cave. That was because Fiend Emperor Apocalypse was not dead at all. The Fiend Cave that they entered was actually a world conjured by Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. How could the grotto heavens of Fiend Kings be released in the world of a Fiend Emperor? As for him and Demonis G, they returned to normal after falling into the tomb beneath the chamber, and could release divine powers and secret skills. It was also because the tomb they were in right now was the tomb of a great emperor. Although the world of a Fiend Emperor was strong, its power could not cover the tomb of a great emperor. In the skies, Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao looked down at the figure in the ruins of the tomb. At that moment, he seemed to have an illusion that the person below was looking down at him with a cold gaze. He still could not believe it. Fiend Emperor Apocalypse was still alive, and had lived for tens of millions of years. Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao was certain of one thing. Even if Fiend Emperor Apocalypse was still alive, he was not at the level of a great emperor. Once one became a great emperor, all the emperors of the upper world would obtain a mysterious connection. Chapter 2544 Death of a Fiend Emperor. 2544 Death of a Fiend Emperor. The two Fiend Emperors were in a standoff. Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao was still hesitating. Although he wanted to retreat, he was worried that he would be deceived. After all, the fact that Fiend Emperor Apocalypse had survived for tens of millions of years was way too unbelievable. Right then, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse raised his head slowly, and looked at Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao, who was in the skies. "You've already lost your final chance to survive." The moment he said that, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse waved his palm. The flames of War's spear that stabbed into the ground suddenly tore through the void and stabbed towards Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao, arriving before the latter instantly. This attack was even more ferocious and murderous than the impact of the flames of War's spear earlier on. At that moment, Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao sensed the killing intent of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. He was also truly certain that the other party was Apocalypse, the ruthless person from tens of millions of years ago. Phew! Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao did not dare to hesitate, and opened up a part of the world. As though he was one with the world behind him, he gripped his saber with both hands and slashed towards the flames of War's spear. Clang! There was a loud bang. Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao shuddered and the world that he had just propped up swayed. It was showing signs of collapsing. A casual attack from Fiend Emperor Apocalypse was already so terrifying and unstoppable. Boom! Before Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao could catch his breath, the massive body of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse suddenly rose from the ground and leaped, slashing towards Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao with his gigantic black axe. At the same time, a gigantic black hole appeared behind Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. Flames of war lingered outside and Fiend Chi surged within. This was the world he had condensed, the apocalyptic Fiend Cave. Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao had nowhere to retreat, and could only channel his essence spirit wildly. He gathered heaven and earth, and raised his fiend saber to defend above his head. Boom! Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao's world could not defend against it at all and was almost defeated, devoured by the apocalyptic Fiend Cave. Under countless gazes, the destruction axe tore through the fiend's saber and struck the top of Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao's head. Without stopping, it split him into two from head to toe. The world went silent instantly. The Emperor's blood dyed half the firmaments red. Not only did the destruction axe split Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao's body, it also killed his essence spirit instantly. This was a Fiend Emperor who established the strongest faction in the Fiend domain this generation and had dominated for many years. However, he died on the spot with his blood tainting the firmaments the moment he appeared today. In reality, the reappearance of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse had caused too much of a stir. The other Fiend Emperors that were initially dormant in the Fiend domain were alarmed as well. However, those Fiend Emperors did not appear rashly. Instead, they hid in every corner of the Fiend domain and watched the situation silently. Yet, even they had not expected that Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao would be struck to death by Fiend Emperor Apocalypse within 3 moves without the chance to escape. Once one cultivated to the Emperor realm, it was extremely difficult to die. Unless, the difference in strength was immense. To think that Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao would die in less than 3 moves against a ruthless person who was notorious tens of millions of years ago. Since he cultivated the Fiend Dao, he shouldn't have established any faction and involve himself with too much karma. If he hadn't appeared to take revenge for his son, he wouldn't have ended up in such a state. It's fate. He only managed to advance to the Emperor realm after cultivating the Apocalyptic Fiend Sutra. How can he defend against the creator of the Apocalyptic Fiend Sutra? Let's disperse. Now that this person has appeared, the Fiend domain will probably belong to him in the future. It's not just the Fiend domain. How can the Pure Land of Bliss and 9 Firmament Immortal domain be spared? Now that he's reborn, he's definitely going to make a comeback and conquer the heavens. At that time, the Trichiliacosm will probably be embroiled in the flames of war. Over the years, chaos has happened repeatedly and many signs have already indicated that a calamity is about to arrive. Although we're emperors, we might not be spared. The few Fiend Emperors hidden in various parts of the Fiend domain conversed secretly before returning to normal. They retracted their auras and vanished. Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao was dead. This scene had a huge psychological and visual impact on everyone present. Hidden Space and the other Fiend Kings were pale. If even Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao could not defend against a single axe strike from Fiend Emperor Apocalypse, it would be as simple as crushing a few ants if this ruthless person wanted to kill them. Greetings, Fiend Emperor. I'm Hidden Space and I'm willing to submit. Fiend King Hidden Space was the first to react and knelt on the ground to express his obedience. Now that Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao was dead, there was naturally no way these experts of Firmament Ascension Palace could retain their loyalty. Fiend King Lu Tsang and the others knelt down as well. Fiend Kings such as Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the others had their own sects and factions and were actually rather resistant to submitting. However, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse was way too ferocious and killed an emperor the moment he appeared. They did not dare to express anything at all. When they saw Fiend King Hidden Space and the others submit, the expressions of Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the other Fiend Kings turned terrible, and they hesitated. Right then, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse turned his head slightly and looked towards Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the others with his bloodshot eyes. Pissed! Instantly, a chill ran down the spines of Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the other Fiend Kings. As their hearts skipped a beat, the Fiend Kings knelt down with a thud without hesitation and sprawled on the ground tightly, not daring to be disloyal. If even Fiend Kings could not withstand the might of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse, it was even more impossible for the fiends around Bayin Mountain to endure. No matter what sect they were from or the level of their cultivation, the fiends present knelt down one after another to express their submission. In fact, no one dared to escape against the might of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. The martial Dao Prime Body was in deep thought when he saw that. Not long ago, a supreme fiend, Emperor Bo Sun, appeared. And today, another ruthless person from tens of millions of years ago had reappeared. If the two of them wanted to occupy the territory of the Fiend domain in the future, there would definitely be a fight. The appearance of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse inadvertently helped him get rid of the immense threat of Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao. With the death of Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao, no one would cause trouble for him even though he killed Prince Ling Xian. However, although the threat of Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao was removed, an even more terrifying and dangerous existence appeared. This existence was probably not a good thing for him or Tianhuang sect. The martial Dao Prime Body did not act rashly. If he hid in the tomb of the Great Emperor with Demoness Ji, there was a chance that they could hide and avoid the detection of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. If he were to break through the void and escape from this place rashly, he might alarm Fiend Emperor Apocalypse instead. Right, you haven't told me which great emperor this tomb belongs to. The Martial Dao Prime Body sent a voice transmission to Demoness G's spirit consciousness and asked secretly. When he asked about this earlier on, Demoness G was hesitant. Thereafter, a huge change happened above and Fiend Emperor Apocalypse appeared. Both of their attention was focused outside. That was the reason why Demoness G did not mention the name of the Great Emperor the entire time. It's not that I don't want to tell you, Demoness G said. In the memories of Great Empress 9 Nether, she was also extremely secretive about this Great Emperor. It seems like the name of this Great Emperor is a taboo that can't be mentioned. Chapter 2545 Heaven Burial 2545 Heaven Burial. Can't be mentioned? The Martial Dao Prime Body frowned slightly. Be it Great Emperor Infinite or Great Emperor Longevity that he knew of right now, they were recorded in the books of history and left countless legends. What was so special about this Great Emperor that even Great Empress 9 Nether was wary of him? Demoness G hesitated for a long time before sending a voice transmission. The name of this Great Emperor should be Heaven Burial. Boom! Although Demoness G sent a voice transmission with her spirit consciousness, the moment those words sounded in the mind of the Martial Dao Prime Body, the gigantic steel at the side seemed to have sensed something and began to vibrate violently. Demoness G was shocked and retreated a few steps. The Martial Dao Prime Body turned around and saw that a thick layer of dust and gravel had fallen off the surface of the steel. It was filled with words. The Martial Dao Prime Body hurriedly raised the soul lantern in his hands, and allowed the light emitted by the soul lantern to envelop the steel and take a closer look. On the leftmost row of the steel were 3 words: Heaven Burial Sutra. Heaven Burial Sutra! The Martial Dao Prime Body chanted instinctively. As though some seal was triggered, the moment the words Heaven Burial Sutra were said by the Martial Dao Prime Body, the part of the steel that recorded them began to shatter and fall off. Furthermore, the trend was still spreading and the steel was already filled with cracks. It's the taboo mystic classic left behind by Great Emperor Heaven Burial. Hurry and memorize it! Demoness G reacted right away and said hurriedly. The Martial Dao Prime Body realized the importance of this matter as well and summoned the Green Lotus True Body. He released the spirit consonance art right away and established a connection with the Green Lotus True Body. Far away in Heaven and Earth Academy, a ripple appeared in the eyes of the Green Lotus True Body. It was as though he had crossed the voids and caught sight of the steel deep underground in the heartland of the Fiend domain. Time was tight and the steel could be destroyed at any moment. The 2 true bodies were telepathic. The Green Lotus True Body memorized the first half silently while the Martial Dao Prime Body memorized the second half on the gigantic steel in his mind. Demoness G's eyes were widened as well as she tried her best to read the sutra on the steel. However, she merely read 2 lines before she felt her eyes sting and tears flowed uncontrollably. She could only give up helplessly. Splash! The gigantic steel did not last long before it collapsed rapidly, turning into dust. It was as though the sutra had never appeared in the world. The appearance of the Heaven Burial Sutra was fleeting. Thankfully, the 2 true bodies joined forces and memorized the taboo mystic classic completely. As long as the 2 true bodies communicated with one another, they would be able to obtain the complete Heaven Burial Sutra. Naturally, the Martial Dao Prime Body would not cultivate this taboo mystic classic. All he had to do was smelt the profound truths of the Heaven Burial Sutra and seek inspiration to perfect the Martial Dao. However, this taboo mystic classic was extremely important to the Green Lotus True Body. If the Green Lotus True Body were to cultivate another taboo mystic classic, his combat strength would increase by another level as well. Furthermore, when the Martial Dao Prime Body was memorizing it, he took a rough glance at it. He was almost certain that this was a Fiend technique, a taboo mystic classic of the Fiend Dao. The Martial Dao Prime Body was already satisfied that he could locate Demoness G in this trip. To think that they were ambushed by ghost Immortals under the chamber, allowing him to make use of the soul lantern to purify them while filling its oil. Furthermore, by some freak coincidence, he even obtained a taboo mystic classic. These were huge opportunities. So what if he did not obtain the Apocalyptic Fiend Sutra? Although the Apocalyptic Fiend Sutra was strong, it was not at the level of the taboo mystic classics. However, the Heaven Burial Sutra could be considered as an actual taboo mystic classic. More than 1,000 emperors were buried with Great Emperor Heaven Burial. It was not hard to imagine how terrifying this great emperor was back then. The name of the Heaven Burial Sutra alone gave off a ferocious and arrogant aura. Could it be that this great emperor had once wanted to bury the heavens? As the gigantic steel collapsed, the tomb of the great emperor could not hold on either and swayed continuously, as though it could collapse at any moment. Let's leave this place first. The martial Tao Prime Body summoned the Hell Suppression Tripod to break through the void, bringing Demoness G into the spatial tunnel. Although he was delighted after obtaining the Heaven Burial Sutra, he did not forget that there was a terrifying fiend emperor from tens of millions of years ago guarding outside. The commotion here might alarm that fiend emperor, and he had to leave as soon as possible. The martial Tao Prime Body still had many questions regarding Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. However, at that moment, he did not have time to think too much about it. Just as the two of them entered the spatial tunnel, the martial Tao Prime Body turned back and looked in the direction of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. He could not help but shudder. At that moment, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse was also staring at them. However, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse did not attack and merely looked at him deeply before ignoring him. Before long, the martial Tao Prime Body brought Demoness G back to Avicii. When he recalled the final gaze of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse, the martial Tao Prime Body fell into deep thought. The way he looked at you at the end was a little strange. Demoness G noticed what happened as well and mentioned in confusion. There were countless fiends present, and only the two of them managed to escape from Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. That action was akin to a provocation to Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. Since they had already been discovered, given the personality of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse, he would definitely attack and kill the two of them on the spot. However, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse did not attack. Instead, he allowed the two of them to leave. Could it be because he's wary of Emperor Bo-Sun who's backing you? Demoness G frowned slightly and probed. The martial Tao Prime Body shook his head. Fiend Emperor Apocalypse was an expert from tens of millions of years ago, and does not know Emperor Bo-Sun at all. Furthermore, given his personality and methods, he shouldn't have any reservations even if he knows about Emperor Bo-Sun. Demoness G nodded. However, that gaze of his was way too strange, as though there's a deeper meaning to it. The martial Tao Prime Body remained silent and could not think of an answer right away. At the mention of Bo-Sun, he was puzzled as well. The moment Bo-Sun appeared, he disappeared in a strange manner once more. All these years, there was no news of this emperor who cultivated both the Buddhist and Fiend Taoist. It was as though something had happened to him, and he vanished completely without a trace. On 2 occasions, the martial Tao Prime Body used his name to intimidate others. If Emperor Bo-Sun was still alive, he should have come knocking a long time ago. Let's go. I'll take you back to Tianhuang sect. The martial Tao Prime Body said. There are also some old friends from Tianhuang mainland there. They'll definitely be surprised to see you return. All right. Demoness G agreed readily. Now that Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao was dead and the threat of Firmament Ascension Palace was gone, she could join Tianhuang sect openly without attracting any trouble. To be precise, from this day forth, Firmament Ascension Palace might be removed completely. From now on, in the Fiend domain, it would be the world of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse before Emperor Bo-Sun reappeared. The martial Tao Prime Body left Avicii with Demoness G and activated the teleportation formation around Great Tai Wei Mountain, returning to Tianhuang sect directly. Chapter 2546-2546-7 Emotions 2546-7 Emotions Fiend Domain, Tianhuang sect. Core cultivators of the sect were gathered in Tianhuang Hall. Apart from Yan Beichen, Mingjin, Gu Tongyu, Chiu Siluo, Feng Zi, and Heavenly Wolf. There were some other cultivators as well. Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath had suddenly gathered everyone with a grim expression. Everyone knew that something big must have happened. Something happened at Bayin Mountain. Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath said hesitantly. Our sect master has just been there. There were not many people who knew the true identity of the martial Dao Prime Body, and they were all from Tianhuang mainland. That was Su Zimo's secret. Usually, if outsiders were present in Tianhuang sect, the Thunder Monarch and the others would address the martial Dao Prime Body as sect master. Something happened to the sect master? A cultivator could not help but ask. Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath shook his head. Up till now, I haven't received any definite news. However, I heard that the tomb of a Fiend Emperor appeared and attracted many Fiend Kings. Even Firmament Ascension Palace's Fiend Emperor was alarmed. Even a Fiend Emperor had appeared. Everyone's expressions changed as they realized the seriousness of the matter. Everyone knew the methods of the martial Dao Prime Body. With the Hell Suppression Tripod, even if he could not defeat Fiend Kings, he could break through the void at any moment and hide in Avicii to escape unscathed. However, if a Fiend Emperor were to appear, that would be completely different. A cultivator said in a deep voice. The news I received was that a conflict broke out between the sect master and the Prince of Firmament Ascension Palace outside the Fiend Cave. There's a high chance that this is the reason why Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao appeared. Another cultivator said. Deputy Sect Master, hurry and invite Emperor Bo Sun out. Now that Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao has been provoked, Tianhuang sect will be in danger of being annihilated. I don't know where Emperor Bo Sun is. Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath shook his head gently. The reason why I called you guys here this time round is because I want you guys to head out of the heavenly world first and look for a star to hide in. Where are you going? Heavenly Wolf asked. Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath said. I'll go take a look at the heartland of the Fiend domain. I'll go too, Yen Beichen said immediately. Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath said. Your cultivation is not high enough. It's useless even if you go. Your mission is to try your best to protect Tianhuang sect. There's no need. Right then, a man and a woman entered the hall. The man wore purple robes and a silver mask. It was the martial Dao Prime Body. The woman wore white and had a face that could bewitch all living beings. Her eyes were watery and there seemed to be ripples in them. When the woman saw some familiar figures of Tianhuang sect, she could not help but smile happily. The woman's smile stunned everyone. Even Heavenly Wolf was stunned and grinned without noticing the drool at the corner of his mouth, let alone the cultivators in the hall. The first to snap out of his stupor was Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath. He was an immortal king after all and had encountered a huge calamity in the upper world. After being imprisoned for hundreds of thousands of years, his Dao heart had long been tempered to the point where there were no flaws. Just as Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath snapped out of his stupor, Mingjin's expression changed and clarity returned to his eyes as he chanted a Buddhist proclamation softly. Mingjin inherited the legacy of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva and Emperor Ananda. With a clear Buddhist heart and profound understanding of Buddhism, he broke free from that bewitchment before long. The third person to regain consciousness was Yen Beichen. The moment he first saw the woman, he had an illusion that she seemed to have transformed into Qin Pianran and was smiling at him. However, he cultivated the Fiend Obsession Buddha Karmic Sutra and quickly realized that Qin Pianran had already died a long time ago. That was merely an obsession in his heart. Although they were both women, Chiu Siluo was bewitched by the woman's smile and was momentarily dazed. Suddenly, a flute sounded. Gu Tongyu was the first to snap out of his stupor and blow the fallen soul flute. Chiu Siluo's heart skipped a beat, and she snapped out of her stupor instantly. Smiling at Gu Tongyu, she plucked the strings of the zither gently with her fingertips. The zither and flute played together. Feng Zi shuddered and woke up to the sound of the zither and flute. As for Heavenly Wolf and some people in the hall, they were still immersed in their hallucinations with infatuated expressions, and had long forgotten where they were. The martial Dao Prime Body did not stop everything. It was good for everyone in the hall to witness Demoness G's capabilities. Suddenly, Demoness G realized something and hurriedly took out a veil from her storage bag to cover her face. She cultivated a taboo mystic classic and had long fused its profoundness within her. Even without releasing any cultivation technique, every single frown, smile, and action of hers was bewitching and captivating, causing one's heart to flutter. Now that she had suddenly covered her face, the others finally snapped out of their stupor. Heavenly Wolf shuddered and lowered his head instinctively. His saliva had already formed a large puddle in front of him. How embarrassing! Heavenly Wolf cursed internally and sprawled on the ground silently, covering the water tracks as he glanced at the martial Tao prime body guiltily. Little Monk Ningjin and Brother Yen Beichin, you guys are here too! Demoness G was all smiles as she beckoned to the two of them. Amitba, Amitba! Ningjin lowered his head and focused his mind, chanting Buddhist proclamations in his heart before smiling over. Patron, how have you been? Qin Pianran was the only one in Yen Beichin's heart. He nodded frankly towards Demoness G. Another old friend from Tianhuang mainland, let's have a good chat. Demoness G paused slightly on Chiu Siluo and Gu Tongyu. The two of them looked unfamiliar and should not be from Tianhuang mainland. However, Demoness G quickly guessed their identities and smiled gently. All these years, I've long heard about the zither and flute fiends of Tianhuang sect. Now that I'm seeing them personally, they truly live up to their reputation. The zither and flute of the two of you are truly pleasant to listen to. My name is Yao Yan. I hope that I'll have the chance to learn from you in the future. Chiu Siluo and Gu Tongyu nodded to Demoness G in greeting. Demoness G's gaze finally landed on Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath as she murmured, could this be? Although she was in Firmament Ascension Palace, she had also heard of Heavenly Wrath. I'm Feng Cantian and I was from Tianhuang mainland as well. The Thunder Monarch stood up with a smile. The martial Tao Prime Body said, you should have heard of Brother Feng's name in Tianhuang mainland. He was one of the monarchs, the Thunder Monarch. Ah! Demoness G exclaimed softly, and bowed hurriedly with a stern expression. My humble respects, Senior Thunder Monarch. Be it Su Zimo or Demoness G, they were filled with respect towards the ancient monarchs. In the cruel and bloody era of Tianhuang mainland, it was precisely because of seniors of the human race such as the ancient monarchs who fought bravely without fear of death that the primordial 9 races were suppressed and driven to a corner of Tianhuang mainland, creating a glorious era that belonged to the human race. There's no need for formalities. The Thunder Monarch waved it off. Although you're a junior, your fiend technique is indeed powerful. Although the Thunder Monarch did not know that Demoness G had cultivated the taboo mystic classic, he was sharp and experienced. He could tell that Demoness G had immense potential and was definitely not weaker than Ningjin, Yen Beichin, and the others. The Thunder Monarch pondered for a moment. The sect master once established the 7 emotions fiend generals, and I'm one of them. If you don't mind, there's a position suitable for you. Oh? Demoness G's beautiful eyes flickered as she looked at the martial Tao Prime Body and asked with a smile. Could it be lust of the 7 emotions? Chapter 2547 2547 There will be a chance. 2547 There will be a chance. The martial Tao Prime Body nodded. Regarding this, he had the same thoughts as the Thunder Monarch. Among the 7 emotions, Demoness G was probably the only one who could take on lust. Furthermore, with just the move she released earlier, it was enough to convince everyone of her strength. With the inclusion of Demoness G, there were now 6 of the 7 emotions fiend generals. Right now, there was only the position for fear that had no suitable candidate. The martial Tao Prime Body was in no hurry. Forcibly gathering the 7 emotions fiend generals was meaningless for him and Tianhuang sect. Of the current 6 fiend generals, apart from Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath, whose cultivation realms far surpassed others, Demoness G was the highest among the other 5 as a grade 5 Heaven Immortal. The other 4 were not far off either. They were all either grade 3 or 4 Heaven Immortals. Given their endowment and potential, it was only a matter of time before they cultivated to become grade 9 heaven immortals or even advance to the perfected one realm. With a melancholic expression, Gu Tongyu suddenly asked, Sect Master, I heard that you have a feud with Firmament Ascension Palace. Even Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao was alarmed. Is that true? The other cultivators felt their hearts skip a beat. This matter concerned the survival of Tianhuang's sect, and no one dared to be careless. The Martial Dao Prime Body said, Don't worry, Firmament Ascension Palace is destroyed and Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao is already dead. Psst. Although the tone of the Martial Dao Prime Body was calm, his words were earth-shaking to everyone. As the largest faction in the Fiend domain, Firmament Ascension Palace was already destroyed and even Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao was dead? You do the talking. The Martial Dao Prime Body looked at Demoness Ji. He could make use of this opportunity for Demoness Ji to integrate into Tianhuang's sect. Although Demoness Ji's peerless face was covered, her voice was gentle and pleasant as she recounted everything that happened in the vicinity of Beiyin Mountain. Everyone was engrossed as they listened to Demoness Ji's description. At times, they were nervous, shocked, and fearful, as though they were experiencing it personally. That's impossible! After Heavenly Wolf heard that, he was puzzled. Even the lifespan of a great emperor is only around 10 million years. I heard that even great Emperor Longevity managed to live for 20 million years. How could Fiend Emperor Apocalypse survive till now? That was also what the Martial Dao Prime Body could not understand as well. Was he reborn through reincarnation? The moment Heavenly Wolf said that speculation, he shook his head and denied. That's impossible. If he was reincarnated, there should have been someone to guide him. Furthermore, it's impossible for him to possess such terrifying combat strength after his reincarnation. Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath asked. Fiend Emperor Apocalypse has a violent nature and loves to conquer and wage war everywhere. Will he attack us? In the mind of the Martial Dao Prime Body, he could not help but recall the meaningful gaze of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse before he left. If Fiend Emperor Apocalypse wanted to attack him, he clearly had a chance to do so earlier on. At least not for the time being. The Martial Dao Prime Body said deeply. Tianhuang's sect is at the borders of the Fiend domain. Even if Fiend Emperor Apocalypse wants to conquer the Fiend domain, he won't be able to reach here within a short period of time. Everyone felt slightly relieved. The Martial Dao Prime Body continued. With the birth of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse, the Fiend domain will definitely be in chaos and countless sects and factions might be implicated. From this day forth, Tianhuang's sect no longer has to expand. We will just wait and see how the situation develops. The names of Tianhuang's sect and Desolate Marshal had long spread through the Fiend domain and even the heavenly world. If there were any other old friends in Tianhuang mainland, they would definitely know and take the initiative to look for him. If Tianhuang's sect continued to expand, they might be embroiled in the chaotic situation of the Fiend domain, and it would not be worth it. The gaze of the Martial Dao Prime Body landed on Chiu Siluo, and he suddenly asked, You were injured previously? Chiu Siluo hesitated for a moment before nodding. It's fine now. I'll recover after recuperating for a period of time, Yan Beichen said. A few desperados of the Fiend domain came for fellow Taoist Gu and fellow Taoist Chiu. Thankfully, Senior Thunder Monarch arrived in time and killed them. What cultivation were they? How many people? The Martial Dao Prime Body asked. There weren't many of them, Gu Tongyu said. A perfected Fiend and 3 grade 9 heaven immortals. Have you had any grudges before? The Martial Dao Prime Body asked again. Chiu Siluo shook her head gently. The 4 of them are unfamiliar, and I've never seen them before. The Thunder Monarch said. I left one of them alive and used the soul-searching art on him. Through it, I saw some information that the few of them were entrusted by someone. However, I couldn't find out who instigated them. Gu Tongyu had a conflicted expression and did not say anything. Chiu Siluo seemed to know something as well but pursed her lips in silence. Suddenly, the Martial Dao Prime Body said, If I'm not wrong, it should be someone from the Immortal domain. Or rather, there's a high chance it was done by the Zither Immortal. Chiu Siluo said. The two of us guessed that it should be her as well. She's probably here for the soul-reaping zither and fallen soul flute. She's really impossible to shake off. To think that she would continue her pursuit here. The martial Tao Prime Body had a cold gaze and his tone was sinister. Sect Master, forget it, Chio Silio said. In any case, she didn't succeed. I don't think she'll do anything more after this defeat. She has already killed her way to our doorsteps. We can't let things go just like that. Heavenly Wolf shouted, refusing to take the loss just like that. The martial Tao Prime Body pondered for a moment. If I head to the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain, I indeed have a chance of killing this woman. However, Sect Master, you must not take the risk, Chio Silio said hurriedly. Zither Immortal Meng Yao is a princess of the great Jin Immortal Kingdom, and cultivates in Flying Immortal Sect all year round. It's impossible to kill her. The martial Tao Prime Body shook his head gently. He was not worried about that. If he killed a woman like Zither Immortal Meng Yao directly, it would be letting her off too easily. The greatest punishment was for her to be dragged down from her pedestal in front of everyone and embarrass her, causing her to lose all her glory. The martial Tao Prime Body looked at Chio Silio and suddenly asked, "How is your attainment in the Zither Tao compared to Meng Yao? I've never competed with her with my Zither before, so I don't know who's stronger." Chio Silio shook her head gently. Gutongyu said, "Her cultivation realm is far superior to yours. However, you'll definitely defeat her in the Zither Tao. You're always flattering me." Chio Silio shook her head and smiled, not taking it seriously. Suddenly, the martial Tao Prime Body spoke with conviction. "I believe that you can defeat Meng Yao as well." Chio Silio was stunned. It was possible that Gu Tongyu was merely comforting her, but there was no way the sect master would do that. The Green Lotus True Body had heard the sound of Chio Silio's zither before. The shock and emotions even touched the martial Tao Prime Body, who was far away in the lower worlds. If she had not infused everything she had into the Zither Tao, there was no way the sound of her zither could reach such a level. The martial Tao Prime Body had never heard of Meng Yao's zither. However, he had witnessed the ugliness and viciousness in Meng Yao's heart. The Zither Immortal had an impure nature. Even if her zither skills were better, she might not be able to play any touching songs. Chio Silio laughed bitterly and sighed. "She's the high and mighty Zither Immortal. I was originally unknown and it's difficult for me to meet her, let alone have the chance to spar with her," Demonist said. "She's the Zither Immortal and you're the Zither Fiend. You've long been ranked alongside her." The gaze of the martial Tao Prime Body was cold as he looked in the direction of the 9 Firmament Immortal Domain and said meaningfully, "There will be a chance." Chapter 2548 Heavenly Lord 6 Brahma 2548 Heavenly Lord 6 Brahma 3 days later, Divine Firmament Immortal Domain, Heaven and Earth Academy. In the cave abode, Su Zimo opened his eyes and let out a long breath. Now that Demonist Ji was fine, he was relieved. Apart from Demonist Ji, he was most worried about Xiaoning. Unlike Monkey, Night Spirit, Baiming Shui and Lin Xuanji, Xiaoning ascended through her core formation and was not strong in combat. Xiaoning might not be able to adapt to the cruel environment of the upper world. Of course, given Su Zimo's current reputation and faction, he could only search through the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain at most. He had no influence in the other immortal domains yet. He would probably only be able to make use of his identity and reputation to look for Xiaoning in the 9 Firmament Immortal Domain after he entered the perfected Immortal Realm, or even cultivated to the Immortal King Realm. Of course, Xiaoning might not have landed in the heavenly world. She could also be in another world. When everyone from Tianhuang mainland reunited in the Fiend Domain, the martial Tao Prime Body did not enter seclusion immediately and spent all night reminiscing about the past with the Thunder Monarch, Yan Beiqin, Mingjun and Demonist Ji. The Thunder Monarch recounted many things to Yan Beiqin and the others about the ancient war where the monarchs led human experts to fight against the primordial 9 races. Demoness G and the others recounted the battle against the primordial 9 races, and even the blood fiend catastrophe of this generation to the Thunder Monarch. They enjoyed the conversations immensely, and everyone drank heartily in a carefree manner. 3 days later, the Martial Dao Prime Body left once more. This time round, the Martial Dao Prime Body did not choose to enter seclusion in Tianhuang sect. Instead, he went to Avicii. Many experts were buried in Avicii and countless inheritances were left behind. After obtaining the Taboo Mystic Classic, the Martial Dao Prime Body intended to browse through the cultivation technique in Avicii and enter seclusion there at the same time. This time round, he intended to come out of seclusion after perfecting the Martial Dao. The true Martial Dao body had already been cultivated to greater mastery, and perfecting the Martial Dao was a pressing matter for the Prime Body. In the cave abode of the Academy. For the past few days, Su Zimo did not cultivate in seclusion. Instead, he held the Bodhi seed and comprehended the Sutra of the Heaven Burial Sutra. It was no wonder why the Heaven Burial Sutra was a taboo mystic classic. Every single word in the sutra contained endless profundities, and every single sentence was enough for him to ponder for a long time. Thankfully, he obtained the Bodhi seed and it had a clear improvement in his comprehension of cultivation techniques. Otherwise, it would take him thousands of years to gain anything from the Heaven Burial Sutra. Su Zimo attempted to extend his palm and press forward slowly. Instantly, pitch-black fiend chi burst forth from his body and his palm vaguely transformed into a gigantic tombstone that was lifeless. Not far away, Tao Yao and Lu Ping went out and returned together. When they saw that, they exclaimed in shock. At that moment, Su Zimo looked extremely terrifying. His aura was cold and dark, and the tombstone before him seemed like it wanted to bury the heavens. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he dispersed the secret skill of the Heaven Burial Sutra hurriedly. The Heaven Burial Sutra was indeed terrifying, and the power of that secret skill earlier on was probably not inferior to White Tiger Corp's collection. However, the moment that secret skill was released, the fiend chi was vast, and Su Zimo's aura underwent a huge change. Anyone who was observant would be able to recognize that it was the Dharmic Tao of the fiend sections. It was not convenient for him to release it casually in the 9 firmament immortal domain. Is there any news outside? Su Zimo looked at Tao Yao and Lu Ping and asked. It had been 3 days since Fiend Emperor Apocalypse of the Fiend domain appeared. If nothing went wrong, this matter should have spread to every corner of the heavenly world. Indeed, Lu Ping hurriedly recounted the news he had seen about Fiend Emperor Apocalypse with an excited expression. Even an emperor was killed. Fiend Emperor Apocalypse sure is terrifying. Lu Ping was speechless. Su Zimo smiled faintly. Although some of the news was slightly off, he did not refute. For example, almost no one knew that Prince Ling Xian died in the hands of the Martial Dao Prime Body. Compared to the death of Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao, Prince Ling Xian was neglected. Even if anyone noticed it, they would instinctively think that the prince died in the hands of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. As for Fiend King Hidden Space and the others who knew the truth, they would definitely not take the initiative to clarify things. At that time, the Martial Dao Prime Body killed Prince Ling Xian forcefully under the protection of a group of Fiend Kings. If they revealed this, they would not look good either. Due to the awakening of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse, the others, including Fiend King Hidden Space, the Martial Dao Prime Body and so on, were almost ignored and no one paid attention to their actions. This matter caused a huge uproar in the heavenly world, and the immortal emperors of the 9 immortal domains were shocked. It was not only the heavenly world. When the emperors of the other worlds heard that, they became nervous as well. Fiend Emperor Apocalypse was not a kind soul. This person fought everywhere and trampled on corpses. His hands were stained with countless blood. He had just awakened in this generation and killed a Fiend Emperor domineeringly. Who knew how much bloodshed he would cause in the future? Actually, there's no need to fear, Lu Ping said. I heard that a heavenly king from the pure land of bliss successfully entered the Emperor realm, and his dharmic title is Heavenly Lord 6 Brahma. It's said that he was originally Heavenly King 6 Brahma. Back when Bo Sun appeared, Bosun killed a few heavenly kings and disappeared. Heavenly King 6 Brahma was the only one lucky enough to survive. It was a blessing in disguise for him. After that calamity, Heavenly King 6 Brahma gained enlightenment and became an emperor a few years ago, now known as Heavenly Lord 6 Brahma. How rare! Suzimo nodded. There must definitely be something extraordinary about him for him to be able to survive from Emperor Bosun's hands. Lu Ping said. I also heard that the moment Heavenly Lord 6 Brahma entered the Emperor realm, he opened a forum to preach sutras and impart the Tao. It attracted many monks of the Pure Land and his influence grew. Our 9 Firmament Immortal Domain will definitely join hands with the Pure Land of Bliss. Lu Ping continued. Previously, the emperors of the 9 Firmament Immortal Domain and Pure Land of Bliss joined forces to kill Bosun. In this generation, Bosun and Apocalypse have both reappeared and the situation is serious. The emperors of the 9 Firmament Immortal Domain and Pure Land of Bliss will definitely not wait for death. Suzimo nodded. The 9 Firmament meet was the best opportunity for the 9 Firmament Immortal Domain and Pure Land of Bliss to join forces. Initially, this event was called the 9 Firmament Immortal Meet. However, later on, the 9 Firmament Immortal Domain and Pure Land of Bliss joined forces to kill Bosun. For that heavenly tribulation, countless immortal and Buddhist cultivators gathered to hold this grand event together to contend for the perfected immortal ranking and Arhat ranking, and it became known as the 9 Firmament Meet. Although it had been many years since the immortal and Buddhist factions reunited to fight for the perfected immortal and Arhat rankings, the name 9 Firmament Meet had continued till now. Bosun and Apocalypse had already reappeared. If nothing went wrong, there was a high chance that the immortal and Buddhist factions would emulate the 9 Firmament Meet of the past and rise together. At that time, not only would monster incarnates of the 9 Firmament Immortal Domain appear, paragon monks of the Pure Land of Bliss would appear as well. The emperors of the immortal and Buddhist sects would also seize the opportunity to gather and discuss this matter. These things had nothing to do with Suzimo for the time being. On the side of the martial Tao prime body, he cultivated in Avicii and deduced the cultivation technique of the martial Tao. On the side of the green lotus true body, he entered seclusion cultivation once more as well, prepared to advance another level before the divine firmament immortal meet and become a grade 8 heaven immortal. Chapter 2549 Grade 8 Heaven Immortal 2549 Grade 8 Heaven Immortal. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 years had passed, and it was getting closer to the divine firmament immortal meet. Over the years, as paragons of the major sects and factions appeared one after another, the cultivators on the heaven ranking prediction changed continuously as well. Even in the top 10 of the heaven ranking prediction, a few people were replaced. As the divine firmament immortal meet approached, the competition for the heaven ranking prediction became even more intense. However, the top 5 of the heaven ranking prediction did not change at all ever since the battle in the Azura battlefield. Rank 1 on the heaven ranking prediction, Yun Ting of the Zi Xian Immortal Kingdom. Rank 2, Qin Gu of Mountain Sea Immortal Sect. Rank 3, Suzimo of Heaven and Earth Academy. Rank 4, Zhong Feiyu of Flying Immortal Sect. Rank 5, Lai Xian of the Yen Yang Immortal Kingdom. The 5 of them firmly occupied the top 5 of the heaven ranking prediction. No matter how intense the battles later on were, nothing could change their rankings. Furthermore, after the battle on the Azura battlefield, the 5 of them chose to cultivate in seclusion and did not appear. Suzimo of Heaven and Earth Academy is indeed powerful. The battle 1,000 years ago brought immense pressure to Yun Ting and the others. All these years, they have been in seclusion and strive to advance. Seems like rank 1 on the heaven ranking this time round should be between Yun Ting, Qin Gu and Suzimo. Zhong Feiyu isn't weak either. After all, his strength was reduced after he was sealed by the malevolent blood in the Azura battlefield. As the date of the divine firmament immortal meet approached, many cultivators came out of seclusion one after another and gathered in groups of 2 or 3 to discuss the heaven ranking. Overall, the divine firmament immortal domain had 7 heaven grade factions, 3 immortal kingdoms and 4 immortal sects that ruled over their own territories. Although Divine Firmament Palace was not among the 7 major factions, its status was extraordinary, and it was also the true core of the Divine Firmament Immortal domain. After all, there were no Emperor-level experts backing the 7 heaven-grade factions. However, Divine Firmament Palace had an immortal emperor holding down the fort. Typically, apart from some special circumstances, Divine Firmament Palace would not interfere directly in the affairs of the Divine Firmament Immortal domain. Instead, they would leave it to the 7 heaven-grade factions to manage and weigh the pros and cons. Even if one of the 7 heaven-grade factions was destroyed, Immortal Emperor Divine Firmament might not appear. The rise and fall of an immortal kingdom and sect was a normal occurrence for peak experts like immortal emperors who had long lifespans. As long as it did not threaten Divine Firmament Palace or affect his status, there was naturally no need for him to step in. The Divine Firmament Immortal Meet that was held once every 100,000 years was considered the greatest event in the Divine Firmament Immortal domain. This grand event was hosted by Divine Firmament Palace. At the same time, it was to express to all the cultivators, sects and factions of the Divine Firmament Immortal domain that Divine Firmament Palace had an unshakable status. It was now 1 day away from the Divine Firmament Immortal Meet. Logically speaking, all the major sects and factions should have arrived at Divine Firmament Palace a day earlier. Many disciples of the Cultivators of Heaven and Earth Academy were already gathered outside the teleportation hall of the Academy. Under normal circumstances, not everyone would have a chance to take part in the Divine Firmament Immortal Meet. Typically, for other sects and factions, only perfected Immortal and Heaven Immortal experts were qualified to enter the territory of Divine Firmament Palace. However, the 7 heaven-grade factions received special treatment. Divine Firmament Palace allowed the 7 heaven-grade factions to lead some Earth Immortals to take part and expand their knowledge. This time round, Heaven and Earth Academy had 2 leaders in charge of the group. They were the disciples of the sect master of the Academy, Sword Immortal Yuhua and Painting Immortal Mo Qing. Initially, given Painting Immortal Mo Qing's personality, she would not be willing to partake in such events. However, this time round, Painting Immortal Mo Qing took the initiative to request permission. 1,000 years ago, Fairy Mo Qing helped Su Zimo save someone in Tsengyan Mountain and even killed the perfected immortal of the Great Jin Immortal Kingdom. Therefore, over the years, the rumors about Fairy Mo Qing and Su Zimo had spread widely in the Divine Firmament Immortal domain. The fact that Fairy Mo Qing took the initiative to partake in the event this time round made everyone's imagination run even wilder. Hundreds of thousands of disciples of the Academy were gathered in front of the teleportation hall. Most of them were Heaven Immortals, but there were also many outer sect disciples with outstanding endowments. Unless there were special circumstances forbidding them, no one wanted to miss this grand event that happened once every 100,000 years. Furthermore, if it was any other time, none of them would have had the chance to enter Divine Firmament Palace. This was a rare opportunity that could not be missed. At that moment, almost all the disciples of the Academy who were heading to the Divine Firmament Immortal Meet were gathered. However, no one moved. That was because there was someone else who had yet to arrive. Hundreds of thousands of cultivators were waiting for a single person. However, most of the disciples of the Academy had calm expressions and did not complain. That was because this person had brought too much glory to the Academy. Rank 1 of the Earth ranking, Rank 3 of the Heaven ranking prediction, and an earth-shaking battle in the Azura battlefield. Sword Immortal Yuhua stood with his hands behind his back. His eyes were closed, and he was expressionless. In order to please Sword Immortal Yuhua, a perfected immortal suddenly muttered, "What arrogance! To think that he would make so many of us wait for him. Su Zimo isn't even rank 1 on the Heaven ranking yet, nor is he an actual legacy disciple of the Academy." Yang Roxa said deeply. "He must have been held back by something important. His Tao children are guarding the entrance and not letting outsiders in. There's a high chance that he's at a critical juncture of his cultivation and must not be disturbed." Suddenly, Mo Qing spoke. "It's fine as long as we make it to Divine Firmament Palace a day earlier. There's still a few hours and we can make it." But the perfected Immortal wanted to say something more. Suddenly, Sword Immortal Yuhua opened his eyes and interrupted. It's fine to wait a little more. Junior Brother Su's fight for the heaven ranking this time round is also a meritorious deed for the Academy. We have to be patient. Qin Xian was stunned. Wasn't Sword Immortal Yuhua at odds with Su Zimo? Why was he suddenly speaking up for Su Zimo today? Why, yes. Although he had many questions, Qin Xian nodded hurriedly in agreement. Yan Ruoxia frowned slightly and looked at Sword Immortal Yuhua deeply. However, the latter had a calm expression and revealed nothing. Before long, a green-robed cultivator sped over from the direction of the inner sect and arrived before them in the blink of an eye. It was Su Zimo. Grade 8 Heaven Immortal! Senior Brother Su broke through again! Out of curiosity, an inner sect disciple scanned Su Zimo with his spirit consciousness and exclaimed in shock. Instantly, countless spirit consciousnesses swept past Su Zimo. Everyone was shocked. Su Zimo had just broken through to become a Grade 7 Heaven Immortal in the Azura battlefield. In less than 1,000 years, he advanced another level and entered the level of a Grade 8 Heaven Immortal. The hundreds of thousands of Heaven Immortals present knew in their hearts that it was increasingly difficult to break through towards the end of the Heaven Immortal realm. Among them, many people who were stuck as Grade 7 Heaven Immortals for tens of thousands of years might not even be able to touch the threshold of a Grade 8 Heaven Immortal, let alone break through. Su Zimo had entered the inner sect of the Academy for less than 5,000 years and had already cultivated to the level of a Grade 8 Heaven Immortal. Senior Brother Su's cultivation realm has broken through once more. His ranking on the Heaven ranking prediction should surpass Qin Gu. He should now be rank 2. That phase is over. The rankings on the Heaven ranking prediction will no longer be updated. Now that Senior Brother Su is a Grade 8 Heaven Immortal, the chances of him obtaining rank 1 on the Heaven ranking are even higher. Many disciples of the Academy discussed excitedly. Yan Ruoxia sent a voice transmission to Su Zimo's spirit consciousness and reminded secretly. Brother Su, watch out for Yuhua. I feel that something is amiss with him. Su Zimo nodded silently. Let's go. Sword Immortal Yuhua glanced at Su Zimo before turning around and walking towards the teleportation hall first. Chapter 25 52,550 Gathering of Immortals. 2550 Gathering of Immortals. Divine Firmament Palace was built against a mountain, and there were many halls. They were constructed against the rising and falling landscapes of the mountain range in a majestic manner. Everyone from Heaven and Earth Academy was teleported outside Divine Firmament Palace. Many disciples looked up at the Divine Firmament Palace not far away and were shocked. Before the Divine Firmament Immortal meet began, a large number of cultivators were already gathered at the foot of Divine Firmament Palace. They came from all parts of the Divine Firmament Immortal domain. In fact, there were even some cultivators from other immortal domains. It was extremely crowded and lively. Look, cultivators of Heaven and Earth Academy have arrived. The descent of hundreds of thousands of disciples from Heaven and Earth Academy was massive and attracted the attention of countless cultivators. Which of them is the rank 3 of the Heaven ranking prediction, Su Zimo? The one in the second row wearing green robes with refined features. He looks like a frail scholar. To think that he's so strong that he can fight against 6 experts on the top 10 of the Heaven ranking prediction. Almost all the cultivators of the Divine Firmament Immortal domain had heard of Su Zimo, but not many had seen him before. The woman leading Heaven and Earth Academy is so beautiful. Someone muttered to himself with a dazed expression. That's Painting Immortal Mo Qing, one of the 4 great fairies. Heavens, the Painting Immortal is here too. Some of the cultivators who were initially discussing Su Zimo shifted their attention the moment they heard the name of the Painting Immortal. Instantly, Painting Immortal Mo Qing became the center of attention in Divine Firmament Palace and attracted countless gazes. Compared to Su Zimo, who was rank 3 on the Heaven ranking prediction, Painting Immortal Mo Qing was much more famous. Furthermore, Painting Immortal Mo Ching was the most low-key and mysterious among the four great fairies and had never participated in such a grand event before. Now that she had appeared, countless cultivators were delighted, and their eyes lit up. Why is Fairy Mo Ching suddenly here at the Divine Firmament Immortal meet? You don't know yet, right? I heard that Fairy Mo Ching is very close to Su Zimo. It must be a rumor. Previously, people said that there was something between Fairy Mo Ching and Yang Roxu. That turned out to be a lie as well. The rumors of Fairy Mo Ching and Su Zimo are not baseless. All these years, the few times Fairy Mo Ching appeared in public was because of Su Zimo. Many busybodies whispered excitedly. Naturally, such discussions could not be hidden from Sword Immortal Yuhua, Painting Immortal Mo Ching and the others. Sword Immortal Yuhua glanced at Painting Immortal Mo Ching from the corner of his eye. The latter had a calm expression, as though she was not bothered by the rumors. A dark look flashed through the depths of Sword Immortal Yuhua's eyes and he became even more resolute. Fellow Taoists of Heaven and Earth Academy, thank you for the wait. Right then, a woman sped over from not far away with the badge of Divine Firmament Palace hanging on her waist. In the blink of an eye, she arrived and said, I'm Divine Crane. Divine Firmament Palace has long prepared a place for you guys to stay. Please follow me. Su Zimo was slightly stunned when he saw Fairy Divine Crane. This woman seemed to be one of the 6 people in the skies above the Azura battlefield back then. So, it's you, Fairy Divine Crane. How have you been? Sword Immortal Yuhua cupped his fists towards Fairy Divine Crane and greeted. Fairy Divine Crane nodded and smiled at Sword Immortal Yuhua. The two of them had only met once and did not have much of a relationship. How could he be interested in how she had been? Of course, she knew that it was merely pleasantries and did not take it to heart. Her attention was focused on another person from Heaven and Earth Academy. However, Sword Immortal Yuhua did not notice and asked again. I heard that you were involved in the evaluation of the Heaven ranking prediction this time round, Fairy Divine Crane? Fairy Divine Crane was a perfected immortal of Divine Firmament Palace after all. It would not be a bad thing if he could get to know her. Fairy Divine Crane did not seem to have heard anything. As she walked in front, she turned back and looked at Su Zimo who was behind Sword Immortal Yuhua with a faint smile. You've seen me before, right? Su Zimo hesitated for a moment, and did not hide anything. He nodded and said, Yes, from afar in the Azura battlefield. However, I didn't get a clear look. That's already very impressive. Fairy Divine Crane smiled. I thought highly of you before you even came out of the bottom of the lake. Later on, as expected. You're already a grade 8 Heaven Immortal? What a fast cultivation speed! The two of them had actually started chatting merrily, casting Sword Immortal Yuhua to the side completely. With many fellow sect mates of the Academy present, Sword Immortal Yuhua could not help but feel frustrated when he was ignored. His expression darkened slightly. You won't be able to live for long anyway. Sword Immortal Yuhua sneered internally. Before long, the disciples of Heaven and Earth Academy entered Divine Firmament Palace and disappeared from everyone's line of sight. Of the 4 great fairies, the Zither and Painting Immortals are here. I wonder if we'll get the chance to see the other 2, the Book and Chess Immortals. The Book Immortal might come. After all, Yun Ting is the younger brother of Book Immortal Yun Zhu. If the 4 great fairies are truly gathered, it will be an unprecedented grand occasion in the Divine Firmament Immortal domain. The 4 great fairies had long been renowned throughout the heavenly world. However, in reality, the 4 of them had never appeared in the same place. The disciples of Heaven and Earth Academy arrived at the residence arranged by Divine Firmament Palace. Many of them left excitedly and explored the place. Painting Immortal Mo Ching loved silence and did not walk around. Yang Roxu stayed by Su Zimo's side, afraid that Sword Immortal Yuhua would harm the latter. At noon, someone knocked on the door. Yang Roxu swept his spirit consciousness and was relieved. There were only 2 people outside and they were both Heaven Immortals. One of them was Princess Scarlet Rainbow's brother, Xie Qingqing. Su Zimo stood up and welcomed the 2 of them in. Brother Su. Xie Qingqing smiled when he saw Su Zimo. In less than 1,000 years, Xie Qingqing's aura underwent a tremendous change and became even more mature and noble. A dignified look flashed through his eyes from time to time. Behind Xie Qingqing was Lai Xian, rank 5 on the heaven ranking prediction. "Fellow Taoist Su, how have you been?" Lai Xian cupped his fist towards Su Zimo and said with a conflicted expression. Su Zimo had once suppressed him twice in the Azura battlefield. However, he truly could not bring himself to hate Su Zimo. Apart from Zhong Feiyu, who escaped unscathed, he was the only one among the group of people who were in the top 10 of the heaven ranking prediction to be unharmed. Moreover, he received a blessing in disguise. Under the immense pressure of Su Zimo's flame-secret skill, he finally comprehended the final profoundness of the Great Sun Sutra, and his combat strength increased exponentially. "How has it been being the Prince of Spirit Cloud County all these years?" Su Zimo asked. Xie Qingqing looked at Lai Xian. "With Brother Lai's help, I resolved many difficulties and gained a foothold." Actually, when he saw Xie Qingqing and Lai Xian arrive together, Su Zimo knew that Lai Xian had already submitted to Xie Qingqing. That was similar to what he had expected. It was late at night before Xie Qingqing and Lai Xian bid farewell. A night passed, but Yang Roxi did not rest at all. He was nervous and was prepared to deal with any sudden changes. Tomorrow was the Divine Firmament Immortal meet, and tonight would be Sword Immortal Yuhua's last chance. However, there was no activity in the vicinity until morning. Sword Immortal Yuhua was cultivating in a room not far away and did not even leave his room. Could I have imagined it previously? Yang Roxi doubted himself. Before long, everyone from Heaven and Earth Academy gathered outside, prepared to head to the Divine Firmament Hall. The Divine Firmament Immortal meet would officially begin today. Chapter 2551 3 Great Sword Immortals. 3 Great Sword Immortals. The Divine Firmament Hall was extremely vast and could accommodate more than 10 million people. By the time Heaven and Earth Academy arrived with their group of more than 100,000 disciples, there were already many people gathered in the Divine Firmament Hall. They were dense and could not be seen with a single glance. The cultivators of Divine Firmament Palace were at the highest point of the hall. On both sides, the regions of the 7 heaven-grade factions were lined up. Right now, the Yin-Yang Immortal Kingdom, Mountain Sea Immortal Sect and Imperial Wind Temple had already arrived. A few familiar faces could vaguely be seen in the crowd. When everyone from Heaven and Earth Academy arrived, the leaders of the 3 major factions stood up one after another and cupped their fists towards them. "Yuhua, it's been many years since we last met." A white-robed man from Imperial Wind Temple stood up and greeted Sword Immortal Yuhua with a handsome expression. He had sharp brows and bright eyes, and a long sword hung on his waist. "Brother Chunfeng, you're still as elegant as ever." Sword Immortal Yuhua chuckled and nodded in acknowledgement. Yang Roxi sent a voice transmission secretly. "This is Chunfeng Jian of Imperial Wind Temple, one of the 3 Great Sword Immortals. This person has a good relationship with Senior Brother Yuhua. Now that you crippled Heaven Immortal Luo Yang on the Azura battlefield, you have to be wary of him." Su Zimo looked at Sword Immortal Chunfeng. At the same time, Sword Immortal Chunfeng shifted his gaze and looked at Su Zimo. It was a strange look. There was a hint of hostility and yet pity as well. Apart from Sword Immortal Chunfeng, there was another person in Imperial Wind Temple whom Su Zimo had seen before. Back on the Dragon Abyss Star, there were 3 perfected immortals. Apart from Sword Immortal Yuhua and Zither Immortal Meng Yao, the other one was this person who seemed to be called Perfected Immortal Wu Feng. The leader of the Yin-Yang Immortal Kingdom's expedition this time round could be considered as someone he was familiar with. It was Xiaoling who hosted the 10,000-year meet and the battle for the seal. The Perfected Immortal leading Mountain Sea Immortal Sect this time round was Mu Feng. He was tall and burly and glared at Su Zimo for a long time with an unfriendly expression. In the Azura battlefield, Yu Hai was killed by Su Zimo. It was not hard to understand why this person was hostile towards him. Su Zimo ignored Mu Feng. This was Divine Firmament Palace. Even if Mu Feng was hostile towards him, he would not have the chance to attack. What truly caught Su Zimo's attention was the black-robed man beside Mu Feng. The black-robed man was only a grade 9 heaven immortal. However, he assumed a lotus position and could sit side by side with Mu Feng. The person's eyes were closed, and his back was straight. He placed his hands casually on his knees with his palms facing the skies and had a cold expression. Sensing Su Zimo's gaze, the black-robed man suddenly opened his eyes and looked towards Su Zimo. Sharp senses. Su Zimo nodded to himself. If he was not wrong, this should be rank 2 on the heaven ranking prediction, the reincarnated perfected immortal of Mountain Sea Immortal Sect, Qin Gu. Everyone from Heaven and Earth Academy sat down one after another. Right then, the faction of the Great Jin Immortal Kingdom arrived in the hall. Their leader was the Shadowless Sword, Zhu Wuying, who had a conflict with Su Zimo and the others in the past. Wow, the Divine Firmament Immortal meet is way too lively this time round. All 3 Great Sword Immortals are here. I wonder how many of the 4 Great Fairies will come. I heard that the Zither and Book Immortals are here, but I don't see any signs of the Chess Immortal. The Chess Immortal was from Mountain Sea Immortal Sect. Given the Chess Immortal status, even Mu Feng would have to obey her if she came to the Divine Firmament Immortal meet. Right now, Mu Feng was leading the group from Mountain Sea Immortal Sect. Everyone guessed that they might not get the chance to see the Chess Immortal this time round. Sword Immortal Yu Hua stood up and cupped his fists in the direction of Zhu Wuying. Zhu Wuying met Sword Immortal Yu Hua's gaze in midair and nodded in acknowledgement. Suddenly Yang rocks a frown. He felt that something was amiss. There were more than 10 perfected immortals from the Great Jin Immortal Kingdom who were taking part in the Divine Firmament Immortal meet. That was a little too many. Under normal circumstances, the main focus of the Divine Firmament Immortal meet were the Heaven Immortals. Typically, perfected immortal experts of the major sects and factions would not partake in the occasion save for the few perfected immortals who were in charge of leading the groups. Not long after the Divine Firmament Immortal meet was the 9 Firmament meet. That was an Immortal Dao event with perfected immortals as the focus, and countless perfected immortal experts would gather then. This time round, Xia Ling was the only one leading the group from the Yin Yang Immortal Kingdom. Mountain Sea Immortal Sect only sent a single perfected immortal, Mu Feng. 2 people from Imperial Wind Temple, Sword Immortal Chun Feng and perfected immortal Wu Feng, arrived. The fact that Heaven and Earth Academy had 4 was already considered many. But now, more than 10 perfected immortals from the Great Jin Immortal Kingdom were present. Why are there so many perfected immortals from the Great Jin Immortal Kingdom? Don't you know? The number 1 Heaven Execution Guard, Songsu, who was initially rank 5 on the Heaven ranking prediction, was killed by Su Zimo in a single move. The Great Jin Immortal Kingdom only has 3 people remaining on the Heaven ranking prediction. Furthermore, their ranks are beneath 50. Yes, I know that. And so? I reckon they brought a few more perfected immortals here so that they won't look bad. In the crowd, some cultivators noticed the commotion and discussed in secret as well. Before long, everyone from the Zixian Immortal Kingdom arrived and instantly attracted the attention of countless cultivators. The entire Divine Firmament Hall was in an uproar. It was truly because there were 2 people from the Zixian Immortal Kingdom who were way too famous in the Divine Firmament Immortal domain. Look, the Zixian Immortal Kingdom is led by Book Immortal Yunzhu. That plain-robed woman is Fairy Yunzhu. As expected of the Book Immortal. Even with light makeup, she has such a bearing. The painting and Book Immortals are already here. They're truly beautiful and each has their own merits. If I can win the heart of either of them, I'm willing to give up 100,000 years of my lifespan. Dream on! Behind Book Immortal Yunzhu was a young man with a long sword on his back. He surveyed his surroundings with a swift gaze and was like an unsheathed sword with a sharp edge. It was rank 1 on the Heaven ranking prediction, Yunting. Yunting seemed to be searching for something in the crowd. When he saw Qin Gu, his gaze did not pause at all. It swept past and landed in the direction of Heaven and Earth Academy, locking onto Su Zimo. The moment the 2 of them exchanged glances, their eyes lit up. Neither of them retreated or dodged with a torrential battle intent. Su Zimo wanted the human slaying sword art. As for Yun Ting, not only did he want to obtain the heaven and earth slaying sword arts, he wanted to defeat Su Zimo and regain the dignity he lost in the Emperor's tomb. When Book Immortal Yunju arrived, Sword Immortal Yuhua and the others stood up and greeted. Yunju smiled and returned the greetings one after another. Yunju and Mo Qing exchanged glances and smiled. The smiles of the Book Immortal and Painting Immortal caused another commotion in the crowd. Thereafter, Yunju looked at Su Zimo, who was behind Mo Qing. "Zimo, be careful. For some unknown reason, Flying Immortal Sect and the Great Gene Immortal Kingdom sent many perfected immortals this time round. They seem to be up to something big." Yunju's pleasant voice sounded in Su Zimo's consciousness. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. From the looks of it, the Great Gene Immortal Kingdom and Flying Immortal Sect might really make a move. However, right now, he could not figure out what Zither Immortal Meng Yao and the others could do at the Divine Firmament Immortal Meet. After all, he was a disciple of Heaven and Earth Academy. Even if the two of them were like fire and water, Zither Immortal Meng Yao would not attack him openly and Divine Firmament Palace would not let this happen. Unless Meng Yao and the others had sufficient reason. Just as Su Zimo was deep in thought, Flying Immortal Sect arrived. Chapter 2552 2552 Change of Rules. 2552 Change of Rules. The sound of a zither sounded endlessly, and spread to every corner of the Divine Firmament Hall. Before Zither Immortal Meng Yao arrived, she attracted the attention of countless cultivators. Immediately after, Meng Yao arrived at the Divine Firmament Hall with a group of cultivators from Flying Immortal Sect. As Yunju had said, Flying Immortal Sect had 18 perfected immortals. It was clear that they were hostile with such a grand lineup. Zhong Feiyu was a reincarnated perfected immortal after all and was also in the group of perfected immortals. He looked at Su Zimo's side and smiled provocatively, making a throat-slicing gesture. Su Zimo's expression was calm and unmoved. To him, Zhong Feiyu was like a clown that posed no threat at all. The only ones he felt threatened were Sword Immortal Yuhua, Zither Immortal Meng Yao and the others. The gathering of 3 great sword immortals and 3 great fairies is truly unprecedented. Unfortunately, the Chess Immortal is missing. The Chess Immortal is probably preparing for the 9 Firmament Meet. I heard that she has a chance of entering the top 3 of the Perfected Immortal ranking and even has a chance of fighting for the position of the Supreme Perfected Immortal. Before the Divine Firmament Immortal Meet officially began, many cultivators were already invigorated and felt that their trip was not wasted. From then on, the 3 immortal kingdoms and 4 immortal sects were all present. They were now only waiting for someone from Divine Firmament Palace to come and host the Divine Firmament Immortal Meet. Before long, a group of cultivators walked over slowly from the depths of the Divine Firmament Hall. Their leader was a middle-aged man in green robes with a calm expression and a powerful aura. The middle-aged man seemed to have fused with the surrounding void as one. The Grotto Heaven Realm, an immortal king had descended. Behind the middle-aged man were 6 perfected immortals. They were the 6 people who had watched the battle in the Azura battlefield back then, and Fairy Divine Crane was among them. There were also many young and beautiful maidservants of Divine Firmament Palace accompanying him. Although the maidservants looked young, all of them were heaven immortals. From that, one could sense the terrifying foundation of Divine Firmament Palace. Here, even heaven immortals were only maidservants. The middle-aged man descended. Against the immortal king, everyone present did not dare to be rude and stood up one after another. The middle-aged man nodded slightly and declared, "I'm Qin Yang, the eldest disciple of Immortal Emperor Divine Firmament, and the host for the Divine Firmament Immortal Meet this time round." Immortal King Qin Yang was at the perfected Grotto Heaven Realm, and was a peak Immortal King. "Greetings, Immortal King Qin Yang!" Everyone cupped their fists. "Everyone, have a seat." Immortal King Qin Yang had an indifferent expression as he waved his hand casually and sat on a high chair. "I'm sure everyone has already understood the rules of the Heaven ranking competition. The rules of the heaven ranking were the same as the earth ranking. It was a one-on-one fight based on the ranking, and the loser would be eliminated. For example, Yunting, who was rank 1 on the heaven ranking prediction, would be up against the rank 100 cultivator. As for Su Zimo, he was rank 3 on the heaven ranking prediction, and would be matched against the rank 98 cultivator. Everyone, I'm sure you know that the higher your ranking is after the battle for the heaven ranking concludes, the more benefits you will obtain. Immortal King Qin Yang said. Of course, Divine Firmament Palace will give every cultivator on the heaven ranking an opportunity. Many cultivators on the heaven ranking prediction were delighted. Suddenly, Yunting stood up and said with cupped fists, Immortal King Qin Yang, pardon me for being blunt. The rules for the heaven ranking battle are way too troublesome and illogical. Many cultivators were secretly speechless. Yunting was probably the only one who had the guts to speak to Immortal King Qin Yang in such a manner. Immortal King Qin Yang was not annoyed and smiled indifferently, asking instead, The rules of the ranking battle have been passed down for many years. How are they illogical? Yunting said. That's because most people on the heaven ranking prediction won't even stand a chance to fight for rank 1 on the heaven ranking. Oh, you have a better idea? Immortal King Qin Yang raised his brow slightly. Yunting chuckled and raised his head slightly, saying proudly, In my opinion, it will either be me or Su Zimo who will be rank 1 on the heaven ranking. No one else is worthy. That statement was extremely arrogant, and was equivalent to disregarding everyone else on the heaven ranking prediction. Even for rank 2, Qin Gu, rank 4, Zhong Feiyu, and rank 5, Lai Xian, none of them were mentioned by Yunting. Zhong Feiyu snorted coldly. Although Qin Gu was indignant, he was expressionless and had a calm personality, not expressing anything. So, how do you want to arrange it? Immortal King Qin Yang smiled and asked again. It's simple. Yunting pointed at Su Zimo of Heaven and Earth Academy. The two of us will fight the first round directly. Whoever wins shall be rank 1 on the heaven ranking. The others are not qualified to challenge us, and they can just go and fight for ranks 3, 4 or whatever. Su Zimo smiled gently. That was indeed Yunting's style. Simple, direct, arrogant and merciless. Immortal King Qin Yang shook his head. This is unfair to the others. Even if I agree, there will be people who disagree. Who cares about them? Yunting waved it off and turned to glare at Su Zimo with a raring battle intent. Su Zimo, it's enough as long as you agree to it. The reason why Yunting made this suggestion was because of the pride in the depths of his heart. Even after the fights of the ranking battle, there was a high chance that the two of them would be the only ones left. However, either of them would be in their peak conditions at that moment, and this fight that was long meant to be theirs would not be completely fair either. Since they wanted to compete, Yunting wanted to defeat Su Zimo openly. Also, in Yunting's heart, fighting for rank 1 on the heaven ranking was not the most important thing. What he valued the most was to defeat Su Zimo and obtain the heaven and earth slaying sword arts. Su Zimo quickly understood Yunting's intentions and did not reject him. He stood up and said in a deep voice, All right, as you wish. Although this was against the rules, none of the cultivators below stood out to object. That was because most of the cultivators on the heaven ranking prediction knew that Yunting was right. They truly would not have the chance to fight for rank 1 of the heaven ranking. As for Qin Gu and Zhong Feiyu, who both had a shot at rank 1, they exchanged glances and tacitly did not say anything. For the two of them, there were only benefits and no disadvantages. In a fight between two tigers, one would definitely be injured. First, they would let Yunting and Su Zimo fight till an internecine outcome. At that time, no matter who won or lost, they could stand out and defeat Yunting or Su Zimo with ease, reaping the rewards. Yunju looked at Yunting and Su Zimo with a conflicted expression, wanting to speak but stopped. Even she did not know who would win this battle. She wanted to persuade Su Zimo or Yunting not to fight to the death. However, once both parties fought to their limits, it would be difficult for them to stop. She was unwilling to see either party in trouble. However, she knew that this battle between the two of them was absolutely inevitable. It was as though this battle was predestined and there must be a victor between the two of them so that the three sword arts could be fused into one. Hold on. Right then, Zither Immortal Meng Yao suddenly spoke and stood up slowly. Yun Zhu frowned slightly. Here it comes. Su Zimo lamented internally. Chapter 2553 Trouble. 2553 Trouble. Meng Yao came to the middle of the hall and cupped her fist towards Immortal King Qin Yang. Thereafter, she surveyed her surroundings and declared, "The heaven ranking is for the human race. Nobody from another race is allowed to fight for the heaven ranking." "Of course." Sword Immortal Yuhua nodded. "Even cultivators from other immortal domains are not qualified to fight for the heaven ranking of the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain, let alone those of other races." When he heard that, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he vaguely guessed something. Suddenly, he felt a strong sense of hostility from the crowd of Imperial Wind Temple. Su Zimo's gaze shifted and met with a pair of hateful eyes. That person had white hair and looked withered. It was Heaven Immortal Luo Yang who was crippled by him in the Azura battlefield. When he saw that person, Su Zimo was even more certain of his guess. As the eldest disciple of Immortal Emperor Divine Firmament, Immortal King Qin Yang presided over Divine Firmament Palace. Naturally, he knew everything in the world and had also heard about the feud between Zither Immortal Meng Yao, the Great Jin Immortal Kingdom, and Su Zimo. With his experience, he could easily tell that Zither Immortal Meng Yao was clearly targeting Su Zimo when she suddenly stood out. However, he was also curious and wanted to see how Meng Yao would deal with the disciple of Heaven and Earth Academy in Divine Firmament Palace in front of everyone. After all, Heaven and Earth Academy was not to be trifled with either. Immortal King Qin Yang had no intention of interfering and was prepared to watch the show. "What do you mean by that, Fairy Meng Yao?" Zhu Wuying pretended not to know and asked. "Could it be that cultivators of other immortal domains have infiltrated the heaven ranking prediction?" "Fufu, it's a cultivator from another immortal domain, we can just chase him away." Imperial Wind Temple's perfected Immortal Wu Feng chuckled. "What's scary would be if someone from another race infiltrated the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain for nefarious reasons." There was someone from another race on the heaven ranking prediction. Most of the cultivators did not know what was going on, nor did they know who the outsider Meng Yao and the others were referring to was. Even Yun Ting frowned in confusion. Yun Zhu observed the situation with a grim expression. Up till now, Flying Immortal Sect, the Great Jin Immortal Kingdom and Imperial Wind Temple had already stood out. From the looks of it, Meng Yao and the others should have discussed a plan long ago and were prepared to attack at the Divine Firmament Immortal meet. Furthermore, the reason given by Meng Yao and the others was extremely difficult to refute. "There's someone from another race on the heaven ranking prediction? Who is it? Capture him. Those that are not of our race will definitely harbor evil intentions." The discussions in the Divine Firmament Hall intensified. Meng Yao flicked her finger gently in the void and the sound of a zither sounded. Everyone's voices gradually faded. Meng Yao said indifferently, "Everyone has heard of this person. In recent years, he's rather famous in the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain, and is even backed by a heaven-grade sect." The direction of that statement was extremely obvious. This outsider was among the 7 heaven-grade factions. Sword Immortal Yuhua smiled gently. "Fairy Meng Yao, feel free to speak. I believe that no matter which heaven-grade sect it is, they won't protect him if they know that he's from another race." "I'm relieved to hear that, fellow Taoist Yuhua." Meng Yao nodded slightly. "Su Zimo of Heaven and Earth Academy is not from our race." Su Zimo had already guessed it earlier on, and was not surprised by Meng Yao's words. However, an uproar broke out in the Divine Firmament Hall. Everyone was shocked. That statement was extremely powerful. Once verified, it was enough to destroy Su Zimo, or even kill him. Yang Ruoxa frowned and realized that the grim situation was extremely disadvantageous for Su Zimo. For Meng Yao to say something like that, she must be definitely confident. Although Imo Qing did not say anything, there was still a hint of worry in the depths of her eyes. How is that possible? Junior Brother Su is someone from another race? Sword Immortal Yuhua looked surprised and in disbelief, as though he was still defending Su Zimo. He frowned. Fairy Meng Yao, you can't spout nonsense like that. It will also affect the reputation of our academy. Since I dare to say it, I'm naturally backed by sufficient evidence. Meng Yao looked in the direction of Imperial Wind Temple and said, Heaven Immortal Luo Yang, tell me everything you know. Heaven Immortal Luo Yang was long prepared and recounted everything that happened on the Dragon Abyss Star in a half-truth manner. I do have some impression of what you're talking about. Sword Immortal Yuhua's words further confirmed Heaven Immortal Luo Yang's words. That's right. I can testify to this as well. I was on the Dragon Abyss Star at that time. Perfected Immortal Wu Feng said in a deep voice. Heaven Immortal Luo Yang's description was illusory and gave off the feeling that Su Zimo had a close connection with the dragon race. He was just short of pointing out that Su Zimo was from the dragon race. The soul of the Azure Dragon and the Divine Dragon that appeared later on were rather strange. In reality, this might not prove that there was a connection with Su Zimo. However, once something like this was said, it would lead to speculation, doubt, and even suspicion. Furthermore, there was Zither Immortal Meng Yao, Perfected Immortal Wu Feng and Sword Immortal Yuhua as witnesses. Sword Immortal Yuhua was even a legacy disciple of Heaven and Earth Academy. What does that prove? Yang Roxa stood up and shook his head. Let's not talk about whether the soul of the Azure Dragon is related to Junior Brother Su or not. Even if it is, how can it prove that Junior Brother Su is from another race? Isn't your judgment way too arbitrary? Initially, Yunting thought that Meng Yao and the others would pull out some irrefutable evidence. To think that it was merely Heaven Immortal Luo Yang's one-sided explanation. Tis! Yunting sneered and looked at Perfected Immortal Wu Feng, pouting his lips. Your mount is a golden ant. According to your claims, I can say that you're from the golden ant race as well. There were not many people present who dared to speak to a perfected immortal like that or even mock a perfected immortal expert. Yunting happened to be one of them. Although Perfected Immortal Wu Feng was secretly frustrated, he was wary and could not attack Yunting. I'm afraid it's not arbitrary. Perfected Immortal Wu Feng of Mountain Sea Immortal Sect said in a deep voice. I heard that Su Zimo specializes in an extremely powerful sound domain secret skill of the dragon race. How does he know the dermic Tao of the dragon race? That's not all, Zhu Wuying said. This person also knows the secret skill of the dragon race, the true Dragon 9 flashes. Zhong Feiyu stood out as well. Seniors, back in the Azura battlefield, Su Zimo even released the Essence Spirit secret skill of the dragon race, the reverse scale. At that time, I did not continue fighting him and left the Azura battlefield. It was not because I was afraid of him, but because I sensed something strange about his identity. I wanted to leave as soon as possible so that I could report this matter to the sect. In reality, Zhong Feiyu did not recognize the origin of the reverse scale's secret skill at all. Indeed, he was forced back by the reverse scale. He only truly knew the reverse scale's secret skill after returning to the sect and searching through many ancient books and information as well as asking the immortal kings of the sect. Reverse scale? The expression of Immortal King Qin Yang changed. Naturally, most cultivators did not know about that Essence Spirit secret skill. However, as an immortal king, he had long heard of this Essence Spirit secret skill of the dragon race. Even if other races obtained the cultivation technique of that secret skill, they would not be able to release it without the Essence Spirit of the dragon race. In that case, there might indeed be something wrong with Su Zimo's identity. Chapter 2554 Soul Searching. 2554 Soul Searching. Yun Zhu smiled gently. Everyone, wouldn't it be ridiculous if you're certain that Su Zimo is a dragon just because of a few secret skills of the dragon race? I believe that many of the cultivators present possess divine powers and secret skills of other races. In fact, some of us from the immortal domain have even cultivated cultivation techniques of the Fiend Tao. Could they all be from other races, or are all fiends? That logic was extremely simple. However, when it came from the book Immortal, there was a convincing power. The initially noisy crowd gradually calmed down. In fact, many cultivators began to reflect if they would be considered as other races according to those standards. The perfected immortals of Flying Immortal Sect, the Great Gene Immortal Kingdom and Imperial Wind Temple frowned slightly in confusion. Their target this time round was Su Zimo, and he was the opponent of Yun Ting as well. Logically speaking, Yun Ting should be on their side. To think that Yun Ting would speak up for Su Zimo, that alone was fine. After all, Prince Yun Ting had always been fearless, and would always do shocking things. However, why would Book Immortal Yun Zhu stand out and express that stance as well? Second brother, can you help to say something? On the side of the Yen-Yang Immortal Kingdom, Xie Qingqing could not help but feel worried when he saw Su Zimo surrounded by a few major factions and sent a voice transmission to Xia Ling. Xia Ling shook his head gently without saying anything. The current situation was gradually becoming clearer. Immortal King Qin Yang of Divine Firmament Palace clearly wanted to stay out of things and watch by the sidelines. Among the 7 heaven-grade factions, only Book Immortal Yun Zhu of the Zhixian Immortal Kingdom stood on Su Zimo's side for the time being. On the side of Zither Immortal Meng Yao, there were 3 great factions: Flying Immortal Sect, the Great Gene Immortal Kingdom and Imperial Wind Temple. Furthermore, Perfected Immortal Mu Feng of Mountain Sea Immortal Sect seemed like he wanted to hit Su Zimo while he was down as well. This meant that among the 7 heaven-grade factions, Flying Immortal Sect, the Great Gene Immortal Kingdom, Imperial Wind Temple and Mountain Sea Immortal Sect had already formed an alliance. Even if he stood on the side of Heaven and Earth Academy, it was useless. That was because Zither Immortal Meng Yao had clearly come prepared for this attack. There were more than 30 perfected immortals from the Great Gene Immortal Kingdom and Flying Immortal Sect alone. If the situation was out of control and both parties fought, Heaven and Earth Academy would not be able to gain any advantage. Furthermore, although Book Immortal Yun Zhu spoke up for him, there was no way she would fight against the 4 heaven-grade factions for the sake of an intersect disciple of the Academy. In other words, the 4 perfected immortals of Heaven and Earth Academy would have to face dozens of perfected immortals from Flying Immortal Sect, the Great Gene Immortal Kingdom, Imperial Wind Temple and Mountain Sea Immortal Sect. Among them were top-tier perfected immortal experts such as the Shadowless Sword, Chunfeng Jian, Zither Immortal Meng Yao and perfected immortal Wu Feng. More importantly, Xia Ling heard that Sword Immortal Yu Hua did not seem to have a harmonious relationship with Su Zimo. If that was true, there would be no one who could protect Su Zimo, and it would be difficult for him to escape this calamity. This is no small matter, Perfected Immortal Wu Feng said in a deep voice. If an outsider has infiltrated the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain, and we even let him take part in the fight for the Heaven ranking, this will be an insult for Divine Firmament Palace. Perfected Immortal Wu Feng's words were even more vicious and dragged Divine Firmament Palace into it. The expression of Immortal King Qin Yang was unchanged and he remained silent. Yang Roxa said, "You guys have said so much but there's no definite evidence at all. It's just your own guess." Meng Yao chuckled and glared at Su Zimo, saying slowly, "It's simple if you want evidence. As long as we search his soul, the truth will be revealed." "No!" Mo Qing stood up and hollered. She was not good with words and did not like to argue with others. Therefore, she did not say anything earlier on. But now that Meng Yao and the others were pushing their luck and even wanted to search Su Zimo's soul, that was too much. Before the Divine Firmament Immortal meet began, the 3 fairies were in a standoff. Yun Shu sneered. "Meng Yao, you want to search the soul of others just because of a groundless guess? You're quite the character, huh? Actually, this is also good for Heaven and Earth Academy," Zhu Wuying said. "If that lad is truly from another race, it'll be good for Heaven and Earth Academy as well to kick him out earlier." Sword Immortal Yu Hua frowned. "The soul-searching art is way too dangerous. If anything happens..." "Don't worry, fellow Taoist Yu Hua," Meng Yao said. I invited a senior of the sect this time round, Old Man Soul Collector. He has a deep understanding of the essence, spirit, and soul. Even if he searches someone's soul, the person's essence spirit won't be damaged. Su Zimo sneered. Notwithstanding the fact that he might be injured if he landed in the hands of Old Man Soul Collector. Even if the soul-searching art would not cause him any harm, he would not let anyone search his soul. That was his dignity and bottom line. It was not that Su Zimo had not thought of summoning the martial Tao Prime Body. However, the martial Tao Prime Body was in seclusion to deduce and perfect the martial Tao. He did not want to disturb him. Furthermore, this was Divine Firmament Palace, and there was a high chance that Immortal Emperor Divine Firmament was holding down the fort here. Once an Immortal Emperor was alarmed, even with the Hell Suppression Tripod, it would be difficult for the martial Tao Prime Body to escape. More importantly, if the martial Tao Prime Body were to rush over right as he was in danger, it would be difficult to explain the relationship between the two of them. Meng Yao and the others were confident. No matter what choice Su Zimo made, he would definitely die. If he dared to let Old Man Soul Collector search his soul, as long as Old Man Soul Collector played dirty, his essence spirit would be crippled. At that time, Old Man Soul Collector could simply say that he made a mistake, and no one could refute anything. Given Meng Yao's understanding of Su Zimo, he would definitely not let anyone search his soul. Once Su Zimo rejected, they could claim that it was because he felt guilty, and it would give them even more reason to attack. Sword Immortal Yu Hua had a gratified expression. That's good. A soul search will also prove Junior Brother Su's innocence and reassure everyone. Junior Brother Su, what do you think? The two of them exchanged glances. Su Zimo caught a hint of smugness from the depths of Sword Immortal Yu Hua's eyes. This is inappropriate. Amo Qing frowned and rejected once more. However, any normal cultivator would agree to such a request. Sword Immortal Yu Hua smiled gently and continued asking. Junior Brother Su, if you have a clear conscience, there's no need to be fearful of a soul search, right? Su Zimo raised his brows slightly. Yu Hua, I suspect that you're a spy from the Fiend domain. Let that old man search your soul first to prove your innocence and reassure everyone. Bullshit! Sword Immortal Yu Hua hollered. Don't get worked up. If you have a clear conscience, there's no need to be fearful of a soul search, right? Su Zimo asked with a calm expression. He returned the same words to Sword Immortal Yu Hua. Sword Immortal Yu Hua was speechless for a moment. His eyes were sharp and his expression was terrible. Zhu Wuying said coldly. He has a sharp tongue. I think he's just feeling guilty. That's right. Perfected Immortal Wu Feng narrowed his eyes slightly. In my opinion, the big picture is more important. We should capture him first and search his soul. How dare you! Amo Qing took out her destiny painting book and flipped it open, prepared to tear it off at any moment. You guys have slandered us so unreasonably. Do you really think that Heaven and Earth Academy is weak? Yang Roxa had a guarded expression as well. He stood shoulder to shoulder with Amo Qing and protected Su Zimo behind him. Suddenly, Sword Immortal Yu Hua attacked Amo Qing from behind and a few wisps of sword chi surged into her body, sealing her Dao fruit. She was trapped on the spot and could not move at all. Amo Qing had not expected that someone from the academy would attack her from behind. She was caught off guard and was restrained instantly. At the same time, another perfected immortal of the academy, Chen Xian, ambushed Yang Roxu as well. He summoned a rope and trapped the latter's body, sealing his true essence. In the blink of an eye, painting immortal Amo Qing and Yang Roxu were restrained by Sword Immortal Yu Hua and Chen Xian, and the situation changed. Chapter 25 55 Promise 2555 Promise. This change caused an uproar at the scene. The situation had far exceeded everyone's expectations. To think that before Ming Yao and the others could attack, internal strife broke out in Heaven and Earth Academy, and Sword Immortal Yu Hua attacked to restrain painting immortal Amo Qing. Immortal King Qing Yang looked at everything with interest and a smile. It seemed like Zither Immortal Meng Yao and the others had indeed planned for a long time and came prepared. This time round, they wanted to kill Su Zimo completely. It was truly interesting to cause such a huge commotion for the sake of a heaven immortal. Still, Immortal King Qin Yang had no intention of stepping in. The current situation was completely one-sided. On Su Zimo's side, even the only two perfected immortals in Heaven and Earth Academy who supported him were restrained by Sword Immortal Yu Hua and Sword Immortal Yu Hua. As for the Book Immortal of the Xian Immortal Kingdom Yunju, under normal circumstances, when she saw this situation, Book Immortal Yunju should retreat in the face of difficulties. Yu Hua, what are you doing? Mo Qin questioned loudly in shock and anger. The fact that she even skipped the formalities of addressing him as senior brother was proof of how furious she was. Sword Immortal Yu Hua had a calm expression as he said gently, "Junior sister, don't be angry. I'm doing this for the safety of the academy. If Su Zimo isn't from another race, he will still remain as a disciple of our academy and our junior brother. However, if he's from another race or has any connection to one, as the number one legacy disciple of the academy, I can only clean up the academy's mess. Yu Hua, do you know what you're doing?" Although Yang Roxu could not move at all, his expression was sharp as he hollered, "You're joining forces with outsiders to harm your fellow sect mate of the academy. You're making things sound too serious, junior brother Yang." Sword Immortal Yu Hua's expression was indifferent, and his tone gradually turned cold. "If Su Zimo's innocence can be proven after the soul-searching art, I'll naturally seek justice for him." In reality, Sword Immortal Yu Hua, Zither Immortal Meng Yao and the others were long prepared for the many possibilities that might happen later on. If Su Zimo were to undergo the soul-searching art, Old Man Soul Collector would definitely play dirty to cripple Su Zimo. At that time, Sword Immortal Yu Hua would stand out and kill Old Man Soul Collector without giving the other party any chance to explain. With that, it would be difficult for others to blame him since he was taking revenge for Su Zimo and had even killed the perfected immortal of the other party. "Second brother, what should we do now?" Xia Qingqing was anxious and asked with a voice transmission. Xia Ling sighed gently. "Su Zimo no longer has a chance. The person he offended is Zither Immortal Meng Yao after all. Even in the academy, Sword Immortal Yu Hua wants to get rid of him. There's no one who can protect him. Actually, many of those things can't be blamed on him. It's just because he carries too much karma because he came from the lower worlds." Xia Qingqing was puzzled by Xia Ling's final sentence. Xia Ling continued, "Haven't you noticed that Su Zimo is similar to someone from hundreds of thousands of years ago? Feng Kantian." Xia Qingqing immediately thought of the Thunder Monarch and blurted. Xia Ling nodded. "To be precise, his potential is even greater than Feng Kantian. Even Divine Firmament Palace is unwilling to have a repeat of Feng Tsantian's episode. He has only ascended for a few thousand years and his foundation is too shallow. Zither Immortal Meng Yao, Sword Immortal Yu Hua and Zhu Wuying are all renowned perfected immortal experts. It can be said that these people can do whatever they want in the Divine Firmament Immortal domain. With so many people joining forces to deal with a Heaven Immortal like him, how can he survive?" "On the side of Heaven and Earth Academy," Sword Immortal Yu Hua said indifferently. "Junior brother Su, the truth of whether you are innocent will be revealed through a soul search. Please. Fuck you perfected immortals. You're even more vicious and hypocritical than the perfected fiends of the Fiend domain." When Yunting saw that, he cursed fiercely. Even though he was not directly involved, he felt suffocated. Another race? Soul search? Meng Yao, Yu Hua and the other perfected immortals were clearly trying to force Su Zimo to his death in front of everyone. Yunting knew that be it him or Su Zimo, either of them would bow down, compromise or back down against such a request. However, once Su Zimo resisted, the group of perfected immortals would have a reason to attack. Yunting was enraged. However, he knew that there was nothing he could do. He was a rare paragon and monster incarnate of the Divine Firmament Immortal domain. However, he was only a grade 9 Heaven Immortal right now and could not help much. At that moment, Yunting actually felt a sense of sadness in his heart, and felt extremely indignant for Su Zimo. Neither Heaven and Earth Academy nor the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain were worthy of someone like him. Yunting took out a jar of strong wine from his storage bag and came before Su Zimo. He handed it over and shouted, "Su Zimo, I can't help you today, but don't worry, you won't die in vain. Once I advance to the perfected immortal realm, I'll target all these dog-hit perfected immortals who targeted you today. I'll go knocking on their doors to slaughter them one after another as payback for you." Many cultivators were shocked when they heard that. The Divine Firmament Hall became much quieter. Nobody expected Yunting to say something like that in public. Yunting was threatening Sword Immortal Yu Hua, Zither Immortal Meng Yao, Zhu Wuying and the other top perfected immortals with the cultivation realm of a grade 9 heaven immortal. Not only could everyone sense Yunting's anger, indignance and killing intent, they even felt a sense of tragedy. Many people looked at the two young men in the middle of the hall with puzzled expressions. Weren't the two of them enemies and at odds? Why would Yunting help Su Zimo? Why would Yunting say such harsh words for Su Zimo? Furthermore, he was willing to offend so many sects, factions and perfected immortal experts? None of them understood. This was a mutual appreciation of one another between two top geniuses. Yunting wanted to defeat Su Zimo. However, more than that, he respected Su Zimo, this opponent who could fight him. To others, Yunting's words sounded like a threat. However, Su Zimo understood that this was a promise from Yunting. Since you guys forced Su Zimo to his death today, I, Yunting, will come knocking on your doors one after another and slaughter all of you in the future. Su Zimo received the jar of strong wine from Yunting and smiled at him. Cheers! The two of them slapped away the mud seal of their wine jars at the same time. The wine jars collided and they raised their heads to drink heartily. Crack! A moment later, the two of them drank it in one gulp and threw their wine jars onto the ground. Su Zimo pulled up his sleeves and wiped away the wine that spilled from the corner of his lips. Thank you, Yunting. However, I'll take revenge for today's feud personally in the future. At that moment, Su Zimo had already decided that if the Green Lotus true body were to die, the moment the martial Dao prime body came out of seclusion would be the time for Zither Immortal Meng Yao, Sword Immortal Yu Hua and the others to die. At that moment, no one could understand what Su Zimo was implying. Everyone thought that Su Zimo was merely spouting gibberish because he was shocked silly by his imminent death. After all, if he died, there would be no future, let alone revenge. Only Book Immortal Yunzhu understood the killing intent in Su Zimo's words. She knew that Su Zimo was prepared for Desolate Marshal to attack. Chapter 2556 Slaying Soul Collection 2556 Slaying Soul Collection. Meng Yao said indifferently. Yunzhu, it's time to discipline this younger brother of yours. Understand that trouble comes from the mouth. Threatening perfected immortals? Perfected immortal Wu Feng harumphed coldly. If not for the fact that he's a prince of the Zixuan Immortal Kingdom, we would have had enough reason to kill him with his words earlier on. Yunting looked at perfected immortal Wu Feng and the others and grinned. You guys are afraid, right? Once I advance to the perfected immortal realm, you can start washing your necks clean. The perfected immortals felt their hearts turn cold. To be fair, given Yunting's talent and potential, he would definitely become a perfected immortal in the future. Once Yunting became a perfected immortal and came knocking, not many of them would be able to defend against him. Sword Immortal Yu Hua frowned. Don't get entangled with a junior. Search Su Zimo's soul first, and see what his background is. Old Man Soul Collector gave a strange laugh and leaped, swooping down towards Su Zimo. Swoosh! A figure flashed and suddenly blocked in front of Old Man Soul Collector. The figure did not make any motions and merely waved its hand gently. Instantly, Old Man Soul Collector's expression changed, and he retreated hurriedly when he sensed a terrifying aura. Everyone focused their gazes. It was Book Immortal Yunzhu. Fairy Yunzhu, what is the meaning of this? Perfected Immortal Wu Feng asked with a frown. Nothing much, Yunzhu said indifferently. I just can't stand you guys bullying others. Meng Yao's expression was cold. Yunzhu, everything today has nothing to do with you. Don't be a busybody. Yunzhu raised her head and met Meng Yao's gaze. Without backing down at all, she said slowly, I'm going to be a busybody today. Anyone who dares to step forward will be going against me, Yunzhu. Don't blame me for not showing mercy. The moment she said that, a commotion broke out in the crowd. Nobody expected the Zither Immortal and Book Immortal to be in a standoff at the Divine Firmament Immortal meet, and even show signs of fighting. Even Yunting frowned. He did not want Su Zimo to die in such an aggrieved manner. However, he felt a little jealous when he saw his sister rush out and protect Su Zimo. He had long realized that his sister seemed to have a close relationship with Su Zimo. However, he had not expected that things between them had developed to such an extent. Could it be? Su Zimo was touched and sent a voice transmission with his spirit consciousness. Yunzhu, you don't have to do this. You won't be able to defend against them alone today. He was mentally prepared. If the Green Lotus True Body was killed, the Martial Dao Prime Body would launch a frenzied revenge. Yunzhu did not retreat still and sent a voice transmission. I'm not only stepping in for you, but also because I feel indignant. They've gone too far. In reality, when Yunzhu was young, she loved to fight for injustice, and could not stand the unfairness of the world. As such, she offended many sects and factions. That was also why she was locked in the library later on. All these years, Yunzhu had been cultivating her character and read a lot of books. She rarely appeared. However, she had always maintained the chivalry and integrity in her heart, and had not forgotten about it. Otherwise, she would not have saved Su Zimo, whom she had never met before, back in Coiling Dragon Mountain Range, and berated Perfected Immortal Jingyu that he was extremely shameless to bully the weak. And now, her relationship with Su Zimo was no longer the same as before. There was no way she could sit by idly. If she were to retreat today, she would not be able to get through the knot in her heart. Meng Yao sneered and nodded to Old Man Soul Collector, indicating for him to continue forward and ignore Book Immortal Yunzhu. She did not believe that as a princess of the Zixian Immortal Kingdom, Yunzhu would really go against so many perfected immortal experts for the sake of a disciple of the academy. Old Man Soul Collector hesitated for a moment. However, at the thought that there were dozens of perfected immortals backing him, Zither Immortal Meng Yao, Zhu Wuying, perfected immortal Wu Feng and other experts, he felt more confident, and continued charging towards Su Zimo. Old Man Soul Collector swept past Yunzhu swiftly, but she did not move at all. Meng Yao, perfected immortal Wu Feng and the others exchanged glances and relaxed with smiles. Not bad, Fairy Yunzhu. That's a wise move. Perfected immortal Wu Feng chuckled. Before he could finish, a change happened and the smile on his face froze. Swoosh! Old Man Soul Collector swept past Yunzhu and arrived before Su Zimo. Before he could make a move, a jade brush appeared in Yunzhu's hands. Without even looking, she swiped behind her. The void seemed to have been sliced into two by the jade brush. Old Man Soul Collector paused in his tracks and his gaze suddenly froze. The life force in his body drained rapidly, and half of his head seemed to have been sliced off neatly by some sharp weapon. His essence spirit was destroyed on the spot and he died. This was an Emperor weapon that Yunzhu had obtained in Avicii back then. It was sharp and terrifying. Pissed! The cultivators gasped when they saw that. A perfected immortal was dead. Furthermore, he died in the hands of Book Immortal Yunzhu. At that moment, everyone truly experienced Yunzhu's determination and killing intent. Previously, although everyone felt strange that Yunzhu was willing to speak up for Su Zimo, they could still accept it. But now, Book Immortal Yunzhu was willing to fight against the top perfected immortals of the major factions present for Su Zimo. That was completely beyond everyone's imagination. In such a tense situation, a single move would affect the entire situation. Once they fought, it would be difficult for them to have any leeway. Yunju's attack this time round to kill Old Man Soul Collector was equivalent to not giving herself any way out. She wanted to fight Zither Immortal Meng Yao and the others to the end. The book Immortal was way too decisive and Old Man Soul Collector was killed on the spot before he could react. In truth, which of the four great fairies are weak? What do you guys think is the relationship between Fairy Yunju and Su Zimo? Judging from Fairy Yunju's attitude, why does it feel like there's something going on between her and Su Zimo? There's indeed something strange about it. I don't think she'll react as such even if Yunting was in danger, right? Pfft. Su Zimo of the Academy. How much fortune did he accumulate over multiple lifetimes such that both the painting and book Immortals are willing to stand up for him? The cultivators in the Divine Firmament Hall discussed. Immortal King Qin Yang was still sitting grandly on his chair. Even with the death of a perfected immortal, he had no intention of interfering. Meng Yao's expression turned cold as she said coldly, "Yunju, are you going to be enemies with us? If that's the case, don't blame us for being nasty." Sword Immortal Yu Hua shook his head gently. "Fellow Taoist Yunju, you won't be able to protect Su Zimo alone. Why waste your energy? I'll do my best." Yunju's tone was indifferent but resolute. The reason why Meng Yao and the others brought so many perfected immortal experts was because they were worried that something might happen. Therefore, even when Yunju appeared, everyone was prepared. Perfected immortal Wu Feng summoned his edgeless broadsword and declared, "Book Immortal, I've long heard of your reputation. This is a rare opportunity for me to test your strength." Zhu Wing stood out without saying anything. Sword Immortal Chun Feng chuckled and withdrew the sword on his waist. He pointed at Yunju from afar and the sword swayed with the wind, trembling slightly. Meng Yao assumed a lotus position and had already taken out her zither from her storage bag. "Haha, let me join in the fun as well!" Perfected Immortal Mu Feng of Mountain Sea Immortal Sect burst into laughter. In the blink of an eye, all the top perfected immortals stood out and surrounded Book Immortal Yunju. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.